Chapter 2741. Yi Qinghan heaved a sigh of relief. Emperor Liang's true tomb had appeared. It seemed like Emperor Liang had predicted today's events. Chu Shijun waved his hand and retrieved the Liang Emperor sword. He looked at Yi Qinghan and nodded. Yi Qinghan and Chu Shijun took the lead and stepped into the ancient Liang Emperor's tomb. Mount Jingfan and immortal Emperor Qingzun followed closely behind. They entered the ancient tomb without hesitation. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Del. In an instant, the ancient tomb was lit up. The ancient lamps lit up and illuminated the passageway. There were passageways everywhere in the ancient tomb palace. However, only one path was correct. It was filled with emperor-killing techniques. However, the Liang Emperor's sword led the way. The other paths were all dead ends. The four of them moved forward. 2 of them guarded the front and 2 of them guarded the back. They were all on high alert. The power of the primordial immortal emperors was too strong. No one knew if the other primordial immortal emperors would destroy the traps left behind by Liang Emperor. They were waiting for Yi Qinghan and the others to enter. However, it seemed like they were overthinking. The Liang Emperor's tomb should not have been broken because the passageways were safe and had not been destroyed. 2 hours later, the 4 of them arrived at a huge underground palace. There was a statue in front of them. Below it was a coffin. There was also a sword groove on the statue. It seemed to be a switch. Whoosh! The Liang Emperor's sword pierced into the sword groove again. The stone statue separated and a classic appeared. To the tribulation taker. There were 5 words on it. It was definitely a letter written by Liang Emperor himself. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan let out a sigh of relief. He waved his hand and took the classic. When he opened it, there was a letter inside. Hiss hiss hiss! Yi Qinghan tore open the seal and took out the letter. The words on it made Yi Qinghan's pupils shrink. You have survived 9 lifetimes and 9 tribulations, and you are already outside the 5 elements. Your appearance may lead to the extinction of the ancient gods and immortals. The ancient gods and immortals have a deep foundation and must have a backup plan. However, they may not dare to kill you because you have survived 9 lifetimes and 9 tribulations. If you survive the 10th time, 9 breakthroughs will be the limit. After that, you will break all rules and no order will be able to restrain you. They may not dare to completely send you out of the 5 elements and stand on the dome. Therefore, if I were them, I would break your wings, kill your friends and family, isolate you, break your Tao heart, and eliminate you from the Emperor's road forever. Perhaps they would have a better way to directly break your foundation and kill you. Be careful in everything you do. If the ancient gods and ancient immortals do not perish in this battle, then Chu Shi's bloodline and the Yen clan will perish. There is no third option. Tribulation taker, are you ready? The road ahead will be even more tragic. It may be good if the people are plunged into misery and suffering, but the most terrible thing is the destruction of the world. Tribulation taker, when you see this, you must not be soft-hearted. Both factions have been forced to a dead end and are fighting with their backs to the river. It is either you die or I die. You may want to stop, but others may not. Don't worry about your wings being cut off. The Yen ancestor has left a backup plan. Remember to leave it behind. The good emperor is bad and has stirred up the situation. How many innocent lives have been slaughtered? In addition, I do not dare to place Brother Yan's heart in the ancient tomb, nor do I dare to tell you directly. Otherwise, the first one to find the heart would not be you, but the other primordial immortal emperors. From now on, you only need to remember one thing, and you will have a chance to obtain the Yen ancestor's heart. There is always a way out. As long as you dare to fight for your beliefs and keep moving forward, the path of survival will be in front of you. The good emperor's last words. The last words spoke of the Taigu emperor's helplessness and determination. When Yi Qinghan saw the last word, he pondered over each word several times. In the end, he still could not determine the final location of the Yen ancestor's heart. The good emperor's last words told him that the heart was on the road. If he stopped looking for it, he would die. That ancient scripture was none other than the good emperor's prediction inheritance. This was the secret inheritance of the Chu Shi lineage. Yi Qinghan casually handed it to Chu Shi Junxian. He lowered his head and pondered, muttering to himself, "On the road, the path of survival is obviously the heart. The heart is on the road ahead of me. Do you mean that I have to keep looking?" The eyes under the mask shone with light, containing a firm will. The good emperor's prediction was very accurate. At this moment, there were already people cutting off the wings. They would cut off all of Yi Qinghan's helpers. The Samsara Dharma king and the Yen emperor were the first to bear the brunt. Even the 9-colored Brahma heart could not escape. The Yen ancestor's backup did not appear. Perhaps, even his backup had been cut off. Yi Qinghan was panicking. The safety of the Kuang manor was his greatest concern. After a long time, Yi Qinghan said in a low voice, "Let's go out and continue searching. Since the good emperor said that the path of survival is on the road, it must be on the road." Chu Shijunxian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He took the good emperor's sword and followed Yi Qinghan out of the ancient tomb. Once out of the ancient tomb, it automatically sealed itself. After a while, it sank into the ground and the earth sealed itself, leaving no traces behind. The four sped towards the ancestral land of the Yen clan. The distance between the two places was quite big. Moreover, it was very dangerous to fly above the ancestral land of the good emperor. Their speed was suppressed. After 10 years, the four entered the ancestral land of the Yen clan. They increased their speed, almost flying through the air. Half a year later, they entered the ancestral land of the Yen clan. Suddenly, they discovered 2 tombstones on the ground. These tombstones were not there before. The four were shocked. There were still experts in the ancient immortal world? Boom. The four landed in front of the tombstones. When they saw the words on the tombstones, Yi Qinghan's eyes were burning with anger. Kakaka. Clenching his fists, Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and touched the tombstone. His eyes pierced through the order of the earth. There were 3 corpses inside. Who else could it be other than reincarnation Shakyamuni, Yen Emperor, and 9-colored Fan Exin? Ada Yi Qinghan roared towards the sky. His fingers almost pierced into the tombstone. "Son of a bitch! Get out here!" Yi Qinghan roared and looked around angrily. However, he could not find anyone. Not even an afterimage. The other party had already left. Sure enough, someone like the good emperor had predicted everything. They began to cut off Yi Qinghan's wings, not giving him any chance. The only good news was that the other party did not want to kill Yi Qinghan. Perhaps they were afraid that he would break through the 9 lives calamity and stand outside the 5 elements, not being bound by the order of the world. Boom. Yi Qinghan knelt in front of reincarnation Shakyamuni's tombstone in exhaustion. He bent over in pain and even had difficulty breathing. What about the backup plan prepared by the Yen ancestor? Yi Qinghan roared hoarsely. Even the Yen Emperor and reincarnation Shakyamuni were not protected? What kind of backup plan was that? The information on Emperor Liang's message paper was not all accurate. My condolences. The good emperor and the Yen ancestor would have left a backup plan. However, the 12 immemorial emperors would not have left nothing behind. This is a battle between immemorial immortal emperors. It's normal for there to be injuries. Jingfan Mountain Master reminded. Yi Qinghan wanted to cry but no tears came out. He was in extreme pain and could not forgive this. Chu Shijunxian patted Yi Qinghan's shoulder and said, "Brother Yi, we should move on. Don't forget that the path to survival is on the way." Yi Qinghan looked at the tombstone. There was no information on it. It only said that it was the tombstone of reincarnation Shakyamuni and the Yen Emperor. It did not even mention the 9-colored Brahmin heart. He did not know who buried these 3 corpses. If he could find the person who killed these 3 corpses, he would know who had left a backup plan for the ancient gods and immortals. There will be more updates today. I will max out the 30,000 update points. Brothers, help me get 10,000 subscription points. Can't 1,000,000 readers get 10,000 fans? Chapter 2742. Tired. Yi Qinghan had never felt so tired before. He was so tired that he didn't even want to breathe. He didn't even have the strength to lift his hand. However, the road to survival was a dead end if he gave up. Yi Qinghan's will shot out as he raised his saber and rushed into the distance. Shao Emperor's ancestral land is directly south. Let's explore the Imperial Mausoleum. Jingfan Mountain Lord suggested. Jingfan Mountain Lord had been to the ancient immortal world many times and knew many places. However, he didn't know what the entire ancient immortal world was like. There were many places that had been lost. Some places were even destroyed. Jingfan Mountain Lord knew the approximate location of the ancestral lands of the 12 immemorial emperors. Qingzun Immortal Emperor knew even more. The two of them led the way as Yi Qinghan and Chu Shijun Immortal rushed into the sky. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the four of them chased each other as they broke through the Yen tribe's ancestral land and entered Shao Emperor's territory. Yi Qinghan was on the way, but the ancient gods and immortals' backup plans were also in motion. Reincarnation Dharma King had been killed, Yen Emperor's resurrection had ended, and nine-colored Brahma heart had fallen. This was just the beginning. In the Void Ridge, murderous intent filled the air as the various experts began to reveal their strength. Although some of them didn't have the inheritance of the emperors, they were more terrifying than the inheritances of the emperors. The inheritances of the previous generation had all appeared, and so did the inheritances of the three ancient gods from the previous generation. Lightning Ancestor, Dao Source, Wu Xian. These three experts were definitely the best. They didn't refine the immemorial Master God's divinity, but relied on themselves to condense new pseudo-Master God divinities. These pseudo-Master God divinities were condensed by themselves, and their combined combat power was absolutely unparalleled. With all the experts out, no one knew if the ancient gods and immortals still had backup plans. However, only the Dao Patrol Taigu Emperor knew. As for whether there were others behind the Dao Patrol, only he himself knew. The experts of the 1,000 clans came out in large numbers, and the elites no longer hid themselves. If they continued to hide, they would be eliminated. No one could think about becoming an emperor. Yi Qinghan left the Void Ridge, and the others wanted to take the opportunity to claim the throne. Kuang Fu felt even more pressured. Even with Chu Shijue overseeing things, no one felt that they were safe. The older generation of Crazed Manor consumed resources like crazy in order to reach the fourth state. The pressure of death often created miracles. 80 years after Yi Qinghan's departure, Gu Qingyu was the first to reach the fourth state. He was the second person after Lin Wutian, and the fifth person in Crazed Manor to reach the fourth state. After all, Mu Zhuang and Charity Saint had already reached the fourth state. Zhou Shuguang didn't break through on his own, but rather because of the supreme insights bestowed by the nine-colored Brahma heart. One person broke through and led the experts of the Kuang Mansion who were stuck at that point. Following closely behind, Chichen Monkey King, Green Lotus Sword Immortal, Jiang Jingtian, Di Longtian, Stan Wuxia, Li Feng, Emil, more than 10 of the older generation broke through one by one. If they didn't break through, Kuang Manor would be destroyed. If they broke through, Kuang Manor would have a chance to survive. At this time, the Bailing King also seemed to want to seize the throne. He actually broke through at the crucial moment. The cultivators of Kuang Fu risked their lives to go through the tribulation. Dark clouds covered the sky. After breaking through this tribulation, Kuang Fu would be qualified to enter the Void Ridge and lead a dynasty. However, at this time, the ancient gods and ancient immortals were no longer willing to wait. They had to kill Chu Shijue and destroy Kuang Fu. Every primordial inheritor received an order. No one knew where this order came from, but the person who gave the order held the Taigu Emperor's token and forcefully ordered the inheritors of the Taigu Emperor to destroy Kuang Fu within 300 years, leaving no one alive. Gu Zhoutian also received the order, including the ancient Heavenly Emperor. The ancient Heavenly Emperor's lips curled up. He was confident and conceited, so he wasn't willing to listen to the Emperor's order. In his opinion, the Emperor's order was nothing. Sooner or later, he would also break through that realm. Even if the Taigu Emperor didn't die, he would be seriously injured. Could he participate in the battle? Would he dare to show his face? As for Gu Zhoutian, she was the inheritor of the Divine Will Master God. She only obeyed the orders of the primordial Divine Will Master God. The other orders of the Taigu Emperor were not worth mentioning. If she wanted to listen, she would listen. If she didn't want to, she wouldn't listen. Luo Wuhan took a deep breath and listened to Gu Jiutian's description of the Taigu Emperor's order. After a moment of silence, he said in a low voice, "Your Highness, what do you plan to do?" Gu Jiutian shook his head and said firmly, "Wait and see. We don't need to participate in the battle. Let's wait until both sides are injured." The mark on Luo Wuhan's forehead flashed, and he said coldly, "Your Highness, I will take action this time. However, I will return Yi Qinghan's life. After that, I will fight with him in the Void Ridge and compete for hegemony." Gu Jiutian was silent for a moment, then nodded and replied, "I will support you from the shadows. At least, I can protect your life. As for Kuang Fu, I will help as much as I can." Whoosh! In the Void Ridge, the various major powers were mobilizing their troops, forming an encirclement. However, a portion of the major powers chose to remain neutral while the others wanted to help the Kuang manor. An example was Emperor Duan of the Paragon Immortal Empire. He had received a favor from Yi Qinghan and wanted to repay it. However, he still didn't know that the Supreme Sage Immortal Emperor was killed by Yi Qinghan. At the last moment, the experts of Kuang Fu successfully passed the tribulation. Yan Yunbei led a group of experts to break through and rush towards the lightning tribulation. Hualing Tian and Yi Chenxing also broke through at the last moment. Once the two young supremes of the Yan clan broke through, they would be many times stronger than Yan Chong and the other elders of the Yan clan. The Yan clan didn't dare to use their techniques, but the Yan clan's sword erupted. A sword pierced through the clouds, shaking the mountains and rivers, and making all laws submit. Whoosh! A young supremes was lying in ambush not far from the lightning tribulation. As soon as he attacked Yi Chenxing, his chest was pierced by the sword and he died on the spot. Flames burned the sky, burning the heavens and destroying the immortals. Hualing Tian used the human Dao technique to derive his own technique, overturn the heavens and destroy the immortals. Its power was monstrous, and it instantly engulfed the lightning tribulation. Even the lightning tribulation was refined. The energy turned into a ball of anger, overlooking the Void Ridge. The stronger the energy, the stronger the anger, and the stronger the destructive power of the burning the heavens and destroy the immortals. Once the two of them broke through, they would be like Yi Qinghan, leading the Yan clan. At this moment, only one person didn't move, and that was Yan Ao. He looked at the two Yan clan leaders in the sky. The human Dao technique trembled slightly, and his blood surged. It seemed to be resonating with Yi Chenxing and Hualing Tian. Yan Ao was also a member of the Yan clan. His bloodline had begun to awaken. Back then, when he fought against the Taijiang Divine Clan, he loathed the Taijiang Divine Clan to the extreme. It was a loathing that came from the depths of his bones. Returning to its ancestral state. The purity of his blood shocked Hualing Tian and Yi Chenxing. What was returning to its ancestral state? It meant that Yan Ao's blood was comparable to the Yan ancestor and the Yan emperor. Roardada! Yan Ao's veins bulged, and his blood was awakening. He erupted with monstrous energy, and his pressure reached the sky. The Yan clan couldn't suppress it at all. His cultivation broke through the third and fourth states. The human Dao technique of the Yan clan didn't need to be cultivated. It just surged out from his blood, and he could cover 10,000 Daos with a wave of his hand. Human Dao is supreme. Yan Ao roared, and his handsome face revealed a trace of malevolence and killing intent. Was this a trump card left behind by the Yan ancestor? Yi Qinghan didn't know that Yan Ao had returned to his ancestral state, and he didn't know how terrifying the phenomenon was. Human Dao covered the sky, and 10,000 Daos bowed down to him. It was as if the first emperor had personally arrived. As expected of the military saint who had followed Yi Qinghan since young. Yi Qinghan had experienced 9 lives, and he had followed him for 2 lives. He had endured 2 calamities. Hualing Tian and Yi Chenxing were shocked. This kind of blood was definitely from the Yan clan's royal family. Yan Ao was actually the successor of the Yan clan's royal family, and he had returned to his ancestral state. Your Highness. Yes, the two of them could only address Yan Ao as Your Highness. Yan Ao's eyes shone. The human Dao technique in his bones surged out from his blood. He was so familiar with it that it was as if he had cultivated it for thousands of years. Chapter 2743. The Yen clan and Yi Qinghan now had 4 experts. Hua Lingtian's burning the heavens and destroying immortals was enough to refine a 4th form lightning tribulation. Killing a 4th form lightning tribulation was nothing difficult for him. He was definitely a paragon, and his heroic spirit was overwhelming. He had everything a paragon should have, and he also had things a paragon didn't. For example, his wretchedness. This guy had been harmed by the divine bird, and now, that wretchedness had unknowingly appeared. He couldn't change it. Yi Qingxing held the Yen clan's sword and automatically became a supreme elder of the Yen clan. He killed a 4th form sovereign with a single strike. His combat strength was impressive. Now that he had entered the 4th form, he could look down on all living beings. Yen Ao's bloodline had undergone ancestral awakening, so he must have been left behind by the flame ancestor. If Emperor Liang was able to predict Yi Qinghan's appearance, it was already extremely abnormal. If the flame ancestor had arranged for his backup to be by Yi Qinghan's side, it could no longer be described as abnormal. As for Yi Qinghan, he had already formed his momentum. The 4 of them joined forces, which was equivalent to the Yen ancestor, Emperor Liang, and the Yen emperor joining forces to conquer the supreme ancient immemorial. Their combat strength was far inferior to the Yen ancestors, but their combat strength in the Void Ridge was also far inferior to the supreme ancient immemorial. Moreover, the 4 of them weren't fighting alone. There were more than 10 seniors of the Quang Manor, hundreds of marquises, and many experts joining them. As time passed, there would be more and more experts joining them. While the Quang Manor was still immersed in Yen Ao's ancestral awakening, the lightning tribulation gathered in the sky. It was several times more powerful than Yi Qingxing's and Hua Lingtian's lightning tribulation. A person who had returned to his ancestral state wasn't inferior to the world's first sovereign. Such a lightning tribulation was probably even more powerful than Yi Qinghan's. However, Yi Qinghan's lightning tribulation was dispersed before it formed. There was no comparison. Dark clouds covered the sky as the lightning tribulation filled the sky. Yen Ao waved his hand and the human Tao drowned out the lightning tribulation. A divine ability formed a huge hand that covered the sky and grabbed the lightning tribulation. The tribulation clouds and lightning of the thunder tribulation were directly crushed. Qi rushed into the galaxy, and the pressure soared into the sky. Hiss! Such a strong tribulation had never been seen before. Yen Ao thought that the Yen Emperor's title as the strongest sovereign personage was definitely not that easy to obtain. Yen Ao crushed the lightning tribulation and slowly descended. He looked up at the sky and his eyes could see through everything. They were like the eyes of the Yen ancestor in Yi Qinghan's eyes. His emotions were complicated and tragic. He seemed to have seen the ancient war, the Yen ancestors' battle, the Yen emperor's battle, the Yen ancestors' 36 elders and 5 grand elders fighting for their beliefs. Yen Ao was the true inheritor of the Yen clan. The Flame Emperor was not waiting for Yi Qinghan but for Yen Ao. However, due to a freak combination of factors, the Human Tao Emperor Pagoda ended up in the hands of Yi Qinghan. However, if Yen Ao was truly a backup plan arranged by the Yen ancestor, the Human Tao Emperor Pagoda of the Yen clan would most likely approve of Yen Ao in the end. As for Yi Qinghan, he would definitely walk his own path and become the #1 expert of all time, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Yen ancestor and the immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor. Hiss! Yen Ao closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His tears flowed out uncontrollably. Your Highness! Hua Lingtian and Yi Qingxing stepped forward and bowed. Yen Ao nodded and said, "There's no need to stand on ceremony. The Yen clan has been annihilated and the Imperial clan is no longer around. You and I are now brothers of the Yen clan who have fought side by side." The 2 of them replied without hesitation. However, they still respected Yen Ao from the bottom of their hearts. As a member of the Imperial clan, he carried the same burden as Yi Qinghan. At this moment, the owner rushed out of his seclusion and stared at Yen Ao. This was the true Yen clan, a true member of the Yen clan. Although Yi Qinghan had obtained the Yen emperor's blood, He was not considered a member of the Yen clan's imperial clan. At most, he possessed the Yen clan's bloodline. Everyone stared at Yen Ao, including Yi Mengshi, who was deeply immersed in the emotionless Tao. Most of them were from the older generation of the Kuang manor. They were not unfamiliar with Yen Ao's atavism. Instead, they felt that it was more familiar. "Brother, congratulations." Huang Peng was the first to step forward. The two of them were the first to follow Yi Qinghan. They knew Yi Qinghan much earlier than Gu Qingyu. Yen Ao pursed his lips and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He patted Huang Peng's shoulder and nodded firmly. "Brother, congratulations on atavism." Yen Yunbei, Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian and the others stepped forward and exchanged a punch with Yen Ao. The older generation of the Kuang manor looked very young. They were at most 2 or 3 years old. However, their fighting strength was at the same level as the Supremes. Those who didn't know them would feel that it was unrealistic and exaggerated. However, those who truly knew them would know that they had fought alongside Yi Qinghan and participated in dozens of death battles. In the end, there were only a dozen of them left. Was it easy for them to become Supremes? Yen Ao was moved. In this life, he wasn't fighting alone. He had more than a dozen older generation of the Kuang manor by his side. With the support of his boss, the Yen clan might be able to defeat the ancient gods, ancient immortals and the 10 ancient special bloodlines. At this moment, Chu Shijue was smiling. The Kuang manor had grown. Everything was as Emperor Liang had predicted. However, this didn't mean that the Kuang manor was no longer in danger. It meant that the danger would be even more intense. Someone will definitely come to cut off their wings. The chances of victory aren't high. Chu Shijue thought. At this moment, Yen Ao raised the banner of the Kuang manor. Di Longtian also raised the banner of the ancient killing god. What? Everyone from the Kuang manor gathered. Their faces were filled with determination. Blood would definitely be shed in this battle. Everyone listen up. Leave the Void Ridge and return to the immortal world. This place isn't suitable for us to fight. We're at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. Yen Ao said. Who was Yen Ao? He was a great saint of the military school. As long as he had soldiers, he could fight against the strong. Moreover, the immortal world also had the chess saint. His military strength wouldn't lose to him. The two of them together were enough to contend against the ancient gods and ancient immortals. However, would the ancient gods and ancient immortals give them the chance to retreat? Obviously, it wouldn't be that easy. A large number of experts joined forces and rushed to Jiangnan Immortal Valley. However, before they could get close to Tianliang Mountain, Emperor Duan received the news in advance and personally flew to Jiangnan Immortal Valley. He arrived before the ancient gods and ancient immortals. Back then, many thanks to Emperor Yi for sparing my life. I've come to repay you. Many ancient gods and ancient immortals are already here. They'll arrive in at most an hour. Fellow Taoists, please prepare yourselves. Prepare yourselves, Emperor Duan said with a bow. Yen Ao took a deep breath and bowed in return. Many thanks for informing us, Emperor Duan. I can't thank you enough. However, less than an hour after Emperor Duan left Tianliang Mountain, a large number of experts rushed to Tianliang Mountain and began a massacre. They were cleaning up the small fries, not giving the new forces a chance to fight. In just a moment, all the experts of the sovereign immortal kingdom were slaughtered. Not a single one survived. Monstrous divine power and divine ability light soared to the sky from the direction of Tianliang Mountain. Even a fool could see what happened. How could Emperor Duan not see it? No, Emperor Duan's eyes were full of regret and resentment. He didn't expect these ancient gods and ancient immortals to be so ruthless. Quick, inform everyone to break out from Xingliang Mountain and kill our way to the immortal world. Yen Ao roared. His aura shook the mountains and rivers, startling the experts of Jingfan Mountain who were still cultivating. Whoosh! All the experts came out, including the experts led by the owner. The three forces joined forces and broke through the void, rushing toward Xingliang Mountain. Emperor Duan also fled. Returning to Tianliang Mountain at this time was no different from throwing away their lives. With so many Supremes joining forces, even if the Supreme Sage Immortal Emperor came back, he wouldn't be able to withstand such an attack. Ratio. The three forces added up to about 1,000 experts. They moved faster and faster, constantly closing in on Xingliang Mountain. However, the experts of Xingliang Mountain also arrived and blocked all escape routes. Chapter 2744. The 1,000-strong army rushed towards Xingliang Mountain. Next to Xingliang Mountain stood three top-level experts. They were Wu Xian, the successor of the previous sovereign god of the primeval martial Dao. The Heavenly Demon, the successor of the previous Heavenly Demon Immortal Emperor. The Heavenly Demon, the successor of the previous Heavenly Demon Immortal Emperor, and Gong Zongchun, the successor of the previous emperor. Supreme Cloud, who was defeated by Yi Qinghan, was also among them. He was one of the best. There were a total of 3,000 to 4,000 people. The lowest was in the first stage and the highest was in the fourth stage. The weak had been eliminated long ago. They were waiting for Kuang Fu to break out of the encirclement. The killing intent in their eyes was extremely dense. Yan Ao personally led the army to break the order. When they were a few hundred miles away, a spy discovered the enemy. Chu Shijue also discovered them. I can hold 2 of them back. Who should I leave the last one to? Chu Shijue said solemnly. Time waits for no one. If they were slightly late, the other experts would definitely arrive and they would easily suffer heavy casualties. Leave it to me. Yan Ao immediately said firmly. Senior Chu Shijue, you deal with one. The other 2 will be left to Yi Chunxing and Hualing Tian. As long as they can hold one of them back, you can end the battle quickly and destroy their encirclement in the shortest time possible. Lin Wutian drew his sword and said coldly, Leave Supreme Cloud to me. Indut the Biling King also drew his sword and said firmly, Leave the Yin Emperor's successor to me. Whoosh. Boom. Kuang Fu's aura sword as their battle-intent sword. They locked onto their opponents and charged towards them with unstoppable momentum. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Just as planned, Yan Ao, Chu Shijue, Yi Chunxing, and Hualing Tian took the lead and charged towards Xingliang Mountain. Wu Xian, Tian Yao, and Gong Zichun drew their swords and charged towards Yan Emperor and the others. Boom! Dao techniques flooded the sky. Xingliang Mountain, which had already been leveled, started to sink. Bang bang bang. Yan Ao directly used his foundation. He didn't even hide his identity. A huge hand that covered the sky crushed mountains and rivers. The Yan clan's great ability gathered supreme essence and directly grabbed Wu Xian. Boom! Wu Xian was a supreme from the previous generation. He quickly dodged towards the sky and avoided Yan Ao's attack. However, how could Yan Ao, as a backup plan set by the ancestor, only have such combat strength? Boom! Crack crack crack. In the blink of an eye, the palm smashed out from the alternate dimension, directly submerging Wu Xian's position. Banged up Wu Xian circulated his god force, and god force surged out from his body as he punched out at the palm imprint. In an instant, heaven and earth crumbled, and the mountains and rivers changed color. The 2 experts clashed fiercely, but it seemed like Wu Xian had underestimated Yan Ao. At this moment, Yan Ao had replaced the Yan Emperor as the #1 sovereign realm expert. Or rather, he had directly inherited the position of the #1 sovereign realm expert. He crushed Wu Xian's iron fist with an unstoppable force. Ka-ka-ka, boom-da-da. Wu Xian screamed miserably as he was sent flying several thousand meters away. The bones in his hand had been broken. The archaic #1 emperor displayed his might, intimidating all ages, slaughtering until the mountains and rivers cried out in grief. Bang bang bang. Crack crack crack. Yan Ao was incomparably domineering as he threw punches at Wu Xian. His kicks broke through 10,000 laws. Each of his moves and styles displayed a supreme divine ability of the human Dao. Human Dao was supreme, and Dao covered the sky. Bang dot boom. Yan Ao used his strongest attack and kicked Wu Xian's chest, smashing him to the ground. The battle ended a little too quickly, but this wasn't Yan Ao's strongest battle strength. After all, he wasn't the Yan Emperor. If the Yan Emperor had attacked, Wu Xian wouldn't have been able to withstand a single move. Yan Ao had attacked so many times, but he had only managed to defeat Wu Xian. On the other side, Chu Shijue was also domineering. He had killed so many inheritances of the Taigu Emperor and the ancient gods back then. If he didn't have some ability, he would have died long ago. Swish swish. Emperor's sword Dao rumbled as it was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, there were 10,000 swords. Each sword was accompanied by extreme destructive power, forcing the heavenly demons to retreat. Is this all that the ancient gods and ancient immortals have? Chu Shijue roared. It was better to force out the true trump card of the two clans than to play dirty tricks in the dark. Boom boom boom. Bang da ka ka ka. Fortunately, within a radius of 3,000 miles around Liang Mountain, the aftershocks flattened everything. Dozens of experts from the crazy manor fought with their lives on the line. Blood dyed the mountains and rivers. In this place, the more one was afraid of death, the sooner one would die. Hua Lingtian and Yi Chenxing fought against the last Gongzi Chun. Flames burned the sky, refining the ancient gods and ancient immortals. Hua Lingtian's fighting style was wretched. He kicked Gongzi Chun's crotch several times, almost destroying his manhood. He was so angry that he attacked Hua Lingtian and was lured out of the battle. The world was red, and everything in their path was refined. Hum. Whoosh whoosh. Yi Chenxing's sword snatched the air. The sword of human Dao displayed its power. In a moment, everyone except Yan Ao and Chu Shijue were injured. However, in the face of such a situation, it was better to be injured than to die. Lin Wutian's sword moved in all directions, exchanging more than 1,000 moves with Cloud Sovereign. They both had their victories and defeats. His sword tore his battle robe, and his flesh was badly mutilated. Boom. Chitian Monkey King transformed into a war god. His staff swept across the mountains and rivers, breaking a mountain and sending a young supreme being flying into the depths of the earth. Chitian Monkey King stood indomitable. The war god killed immortals. The stable space of the void ridge was shattered. Hum. Solitary sword breaks Dao. Gu Qingyu was persistent in his solitary sword path. However, this time, his solitary sword path was no longer cold. Instead, there was a layer of love and tolerance, making his sword technique even more fierce and domineering. No one could stop him. Jiang Jingtian killed a third-degree expert with a spear. He led the army to fight against the ancient gods and ancient immortals. His name as the vanguard swept through all enemies. Di Longtian held the ancient killing god flag. His body was covered in blood as he led the experts to fight. He wanted to fight to his death. Overall, the crazy manor had the upper hand. There were a few people who hadn't made a move yet. They were the owner, Yi Mingxi, and Mu Zhuang. It wasn't that they didn't want to make a move, but there were several waves of forces coming from the direction of Tianliang Mountain. They were afraid of being surrounded, so they could only send a group of experts to stop them. At this moment, Wu Xian and the others had finally adapted to the fighting style of Yan Ao and the others. They gradually stabilized their foundation. However, Chu Shijue wasn't someone to be trifled with. He could kill the Taigu Emperor's inheritance and the ancient god's inheritance. He could do the same in this life. Boom. Bang. The Emperor's sword technique was executed to the extreme. Every sword was exquisite as if it could predict the opponent's attack. Therefore, it could always intercept in advance or even bypass the opponent's attack to hit the opponent. Crack crack crack. Boom. Bang bang bang. Emperor Liang's sword technique was executed to the extreme. It was a pity that he didn't learn Emperor Liang's prediction technique. Otherwise, his combat power would be greatly increased. The combat power of this life was far inferior to that of the immemorial era. However, no one had learned the profound meaning of the immemorial era. It was still considered fair. If you wanted to win, you had to risk your life. Blood dyed everyone's battle robes red. The experts of the younger generation of the Kuang Manor, as well as the experts who joined later, began to fall. Death was the end. They should rest. The elders of the Kuang Manor crazily attacked. They only wanted to reduce the number of casualties on their side. They would rather be injured than to share the burden with others. The ancient gods and ancient immortals were frightened. They didn't come from the same faction, so there wasn't much cohesion. Who would be willing to die for each other? The Kwang Manor firmly held the advantage. Hummed at the sword whistled like a song, singing between heaven and earth. Green Lotus Sword Immortal launched a sneak attack, directly charging at the retreating heaven demon. Kachadadadot roar. The sound of bones breaking resounded through the mountains and rivers, followed by a mournful roar. The heaven demon transformed, but his sternum was broken by Green Lotus Sword Immortal's sword. His body flew backward. However, Chu Shijue grasped this great opportunity. He shattered space and time, and a sword wave pierced through the void, directly piercing through the heaven demon's head. Chapter 2745. The heavenly demon's defenses had been broken through by Green Lotus Sword Immortal, and he was killed by Chu Shijun. The combined defenses of the ancient gods and ancient immortals had been broken through. The ancient gods and ancient immortals had been defeated. Some of them did not want to participate in the battle and had been forcefully recruited. At this moment, they began to flee. Boom! After Chu Shijue killed the heaven demon, he shattered the void with a kick and ruthlessly smashed the head of Yan Ao's opponent, Wu Xian, almost causing his head to explode. Wu Xian's head fell into a coma on the spot. His soul felt as if it had exploded. His vision blurred, and he couldn't see anything. Bang bang bang. Yan Ao's palm landed on his chest, directly shattering all of his ribs. Puchi. The sword song was played again, and a green lotus descended from the sky. A sword pierced through Wu Xian's head and collided with the divine deity. It was almost pierced through by the divine deity, and at that time, a crack appeared. Wu Xian spat out a mouthful of blood essence and died completely. In just an hour, 2 primordial inheritors from the previous generation had died. It wasn't that they weren't strong, but that Kwang Fu was too reckless. They dared to kill these people in their 4th form. They were clearly treating their lives as child's play. With the death of the 2 great experts, the joint force of the ancient gods and ancient immortals was instantly broken. The group of heroes turned into defeated beasts and fled in disorder. A breakthrough had been made. Under the leadership of Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, and the others, Kwang Fu's momentum grew even stronger. They crushed the enemy and fled to the other side of the Void Ridge. At this moment, Chu Shijue and Yan Ao joined hands to attack the final expert, Gong Zichun. At this moment, Gong Zichun was being held back by Hua Lingtian and Yi Chenxing. He was unable to do anything. He couldn't even hurt Hua Lingtian's hair. Instead, he was almost kicked in the groin a few times. The wretched Hua Lingtian had a strange combat technique. Together with his burning heaven and destroying immortal divine ability, he directly burned all of Gong Zichun's hair away, turning him into a bald donkey. Boom! Chu Shijue and Yan Ao were extremely powerful. In the blink of an eye, they had rushed dozens of li away. Whoever dared to stop them would be trampled to death. Seeing that he no longer had a chance to kill Hua Lingtian, Gong Zichun had no choice but to flee the battlefield, leaving behind a large number of ancient gods and ancient immortals to die. Seeing that Gong Zichun had escaped, Yan Ao and Chu Shiju charged into the enemy group. They were practically annihilating the enemy. There were very few who could escape their pursuit. Supreme Cloud had escaped. He was considered smart. He was the first one to escape when he saw that there was no chance. Lin Wutian could injure him, but he couldn't kill him, let alone stop him. More than 3,000 ancient gods and ancient immortals had come, but almost all of them had died. Only a dozen or so true young supremes had managed to escape. The insane manor had suffered quite a number of injuries. Dozens of people had died. The weaker ones were mostly people who had joined later. There was no helping it. The difference between their will to die and the insane manor's people was too great. How could they survive a battle of experts if they had the intention to retreat? Everyone was injured. The sword wounds had almost pierced through their flesh, causing them to bleed profusely. However, there was no chance to recover at this time because the other group of experts had already clashed with Yi Mengxi and the others. The other side had many experts, and there were also experts from the previous generation. Even though the district master had comprehended the Star River reversal, he could only block one of them. Yi Mingxi also blocked one of them. However, the other side had 9 people in total. 2 of them had died, and 1 had escaped. There were still 6 people left. Mu Zhuang, Charity Saint, and Zhou Shuguang, the 3 great experts, forcefully blocked one of them. The 3 of them had comprehended the same cultivation technique, sect origin swords. Their Taoist techniques were also from the 9-colored Brahmin heart. Whoosh, 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 boom. Mountain ranges were flattened, the earth cracked, and blood dyed the space. No one could escape from the decisive battle. Whoosh. Just as the 3 battlefields erupted, the lightning ancestor controlled 10,000 lightning bolts and was about to attack. Suddenly he felt a chill on his back, followed by a sharp pain. He turned around and found that there was a person behind him. This person had a jade-like face and cold eyes. The short blade in the person's hand was directly stabbed into his neck. It was Yan Yunbei. The lightning ancestor roared. He waved his hand and a thick lightning sword appeared. However, after Yan Yunbei succeeded, he quickly fled. The lightning streaked past him, shattering his battle robe. If he was a step late, he would have died on the spot. Yan Yunbei fled, but Yi Mingxi appeared. The emotionless seal descended from the sky, crushing the lightning order. She directly smashed the lightning ancestor into the ground, causing the earth to collapse. Whoosh, boom. The lightning sword pierced through the rainbow, directly shattering the emotionless seal. The lightning ancestor was like a demon as he attacked Yi Mingxi. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yan Ao and the others were rushing to the rescue, but another 3 figures came from the other side. They were also experts from the previous generation. There were too many experts. There was no way to fight them head-on. Long Tian, Jingtan, lead the crazy mansion to retreat first. The rest of you retreat as you fight. Don't linger. Yan Ao roared, his voice reverberating. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Divine light soared into the sky. Human Tao and celestial race mystiques clashed, drowning out all Dharma and Logos. Everything avoided them. Chu Shijue was even more powerful. This was a real battle to the death. If they were careless, even if the Emperor's road was formed, they would die on the spot. The only pity was that Yi Qinghan was not here. Otherwise, the battle would be even more tragic. If both sides did not retreat, it was possible that they would all die together. Crack, 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 whoosh, whoosh. Other than Jiang Jingtian and Di Longtian, the rest of the older generation of the Crazy Mansion had joined the battle. They fought and retreated at the same time. It was quite a tragic scene. However, once someone was seriously injured, the others would rush to their rescue and bring them to the rear. At this moment, Yi Qinghan and the others had entered the Firmament Emperor's ancestral land. However, at this moment, Yi Qinghan was alarmed. He had a feeling that something big was about to happen. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. He did not dare to place all his hopes on the Yen ancestor's backup plan. He said in a low voice, "I need to find the heart. Senior Mountain Lord, please take the divine bird with you back to the Void Ridge. I'm worried that something will happen to the Crazy Mansion." Jing Fan Mountain Lord nodded. This worry was not without reason. No matter how many experts there were in the Crazy Mansion, how could they compare to all the ancient gods and ancient immortals? The divine bird did not want to stay in the ancient immortal world. After all, it was too dangerous here, so it agreed without hesitation. "Boss, take care. As for the Crazy Mansion, you can leave it to me. As long as the Taigu Emperor doesn't appear, I can definitely play them to death," Supreme Yi said, patting his chest. Yi Qinghan stared at Supreme Yi and said coldly, "If you dare to abandon the Crazy Mansion and run away when the time comes, I'll kill you directly." Don't worry. I'm loyal. In the future, I'll be the Emperor of all beasts. How could I do something like running away?" Supreme Yi said confidently. Yi Qinghan waved his hand, indicating for Jingfan Mountain Lord to take this guy away. Whoosh, whoosh. Jingfan Mountain Lord was as fast as lightning. She dragged Supreme Yi and rushed into the distance. Supreme Yi changed back to his original body and grabbed Jingfan Mountain Lord's battle robe tightly. He swayed with the wind, but he would not be shaken off. Xiao Thearka's territory was filled with mountains and valleys. Primordial beasts fought on the ground and birds beat the sky. They were the true kings of the ancient immortal world. At this moment, immortal Emperor Qingzun was leading the way. Yi Qinghan and Chu Shijun Xian followed silently, vigilantly guarding their surroundings. They kept approaching the Shao Thearka's imperial mausoleum. Some imperial mausoleums had emperor corpses buried in them, while others were empty. However, every imperial mausoleum was filled with killing intent. Even after countless years, the primordial killing seal was still in effect. The three of them walked at the same pace, maintaining a constant speed. Yi Qinghan adjusted himself to the peak state, ready to unleash his strongest attack at any time. However, this consumed a lot of energy. There were all kinds of resources in the ancient immortal world. There were many supreme immortal treasures. The three of them did not even have time to refine them into elixirs. They swallowed them directly. Although it was a waste, their injuries were recovering rapidly. Yi Qinghan used all these immortal treasures to refine his injured body. Along the way, the three of them swallowed countless immortal treasures and refined many primordial origins. They killed many birds and beasts and ate their hearts and flesh directly to maintain their vitality and stamina. A few years later, the three of them entered the Shao Thearka's ancestral land. The large medicinal field had not been taken care of for a long time. Thorns and weeds grew everywhere. There were many immortal treasures in the fourth state hidden inside. Yi Qinghan's eyes pierced through the thorns and weeds. He quickly identified where there were treasures and where there were none. He waved his hand and took away the real immortal treasures. Some armors and corpses had not completely decayed. It was terrifying to look at. There were battlefields everywhere. It was not a pure land. The three of them quickly swept through the nearby resources. Whoever obtained them would use them. They did not keep them at all. At this time, keeping the resources was equivalent to leaving them for the enemy to use. Yi Qinghan sat cross-legged on the ground. He refined dozens of immortal treasures in the fourth state and refined every inch of his flesh. His body turned into a giant demon core of the starry sky. It was full of dharma and logos and patterns. A few days later, Yi Qinghan stood up and looked at the majestic mountain range. There was a strong pressure there. A tombstone symbolized one's identity. There were many dilapidated palaces around. No one knew where Emperor Liang had hidden the Yan ancestor's heart. He could only search through the palaces one by one. Under normal circumstances, the most dangerous place was the safest. The safest place would be the ancestral land of the 12 immemorial emperors, the imperial mausoleum. Ancient gods and ancient immortals would not dare to desecrate such a place. It was most likely to be hidden here. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and erased the ancient vines on the ancient palaces. He threw the start-whining vine here and let it devour immortal treasures and the flesh of monsters to help it break through. Bush, 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 bush. The start-whining vine occupied a large area and devoured the ancient creatures crazily. The green vines stretched more than 100 miles. Bush. Just as the start-whining vine was cleaning up the palaces, a huge plaque fell down. Dust flew everywhere. There were 4 words on it that were powerful and soul-stirring. Lingshao Imperial Palace. It was full of dharma and logos and great Tao. It was accompanied by the Emperor's Law. It had stood proudly in the world for countless years and had not decayed until now. Gulp. Immortal Emperor Qingzun swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He had been here before, but he did not dare to touch it casually for fear of activating the immemorial killing seal. However, with the start-whining vine leading the way, everything was much more convenient. Although the majestic palace was dilapidated, one could already imagine its majesty in the past. It was majestic. Yi Qinghan stepped on the Lingshao Imperial Palace's plaque and looked deep into the palace. He activated the Yan ancestor's eyes. The Yan ancestor's qi and blood surged as he tried to find the location of the heart. Chapter 2746. His bloodline rippled into the depths, but he didn't find any organs of the flame ancestor. Yi Qinghan frowned. His face under the mask revealed a trace of viciousness. The path to survival is on the way, Yi Qinghan said hoarsely. He walked towards the Lingshao Imperial Hall without hesitation. He wanted to see the glory of the Lingshao Imperial Hall. It was impossible that the Imperial Hall didn't even have a single treasure. The Lingshao Imperial Hall still had its majestic majesty. It was as vast as a mountain range. It towered into the clouds. Yi Qinghan went straight to the main hall. There were star-twining vines, god-devouring eagles, and rainbow snakes searching the side halls. Chu Shijun Xian and Immortal Emperor Qingzun were also very excited. No one came to these places after the Taigu Emperor's battle. There were many treasures left behind. Every one of them was priceless. Creak, the withered profound wood door was rusty. It made an ear-piercing sound when it was pushed. The interior of the hall was dazzling. Although the windows were blocked by vegetation, there was still light inside. Many treasures were shining and scattered everywhere. The battle back then was too fierce. No one had time to pack up their belongings. Everything was left here. After the battle ended, tens of thousands of years had passed. All the paths were blocked by vegetation. No one knew where was the path to survival and where was the path to death. Therefore, very few people came back. Even if they came back, they would just pay respects to their ancestors' graves and leave. The treasures were still here. Immortal weapons, high-grade immortal armors. Any one of them could make a fourth-state expert jealous. There were also some low-grade equipment. The three of them didn't reject them and took them all. After about 2 hours, they took all the treasures and cleaned up the Imperial Hall. They even took the Emperor Dragon Throne. These dragon thrones were made of supreme treasures and had extremely strong defense. Yi Qinghan began to move through the side halls of the Imperial Hall. There were many ancient books inside. Most of them were rotten. Only some of the Taigu Emperor's divine books hadn't decayed. They were even brand new. The three of them took all the divine books that were left behind. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large number of ancient books were swept into the high-grade immortal ring, but there was one book that did not move at all. It did not even emit a single ray of light. If Yi Qinghan had not accidentally seen it, he would have thought that it was solid wood. When Yi Qinghan reached out to grab the ancient book, the other two noticed it. They immediately let out a puzzled cry and surrounded him. "What is this?" Chu Shijun asked curiously. There were no words on the cover of the ancient book. Yi Qinghan tried to flip open the first page, but the ancient book was as heavy as the stars. Even with his strength, he could not open it, much less take it down. "Let me try." Qingzun Immortal Emperor and Chu Shijunxian said in unison. Yi Qinghan did not refute. Treasures belonged to those who were fated to obtain them. Since he could not pick them up, it meant that he was not fated to obtain them. Yi Qinghan slowly retreated. Under the mask, his eyes were fixed on the classic without the slightest bit of deviation. Chu Shijunxian was the second to test. He roared and exhausted all his strength, but he still could not take the ancient book. Qingzun Immortal Emperor was delighted. He used his profound technique. The ancient book did not move. Even the bookshelf did not move. Bang! Yi Qinghan turned around and kicked another bookshelf. The bookshelf shattered and turned into ruins. Yi Qinghan pondered for a moment and said, "This bookshelf is specially made. It is attached with an emperor technique. Also, this ancient book has been placed with an emperor technique of the primordial immortal emperor. If you do not meet the requirements, you will not be able to open it and take it away." Chu Shijunxian and Qingzun Immortal Emperor fell into deep thought. This was clearly an emperor technique. Otherwise, the primordial immortal emperor would not have used such a great technique to nail it here. "Can we use the Liang Emperor sword to cut this piece of wood and take it away?" Chu Shijunxian suggested. "We can try." Yi Qinghan and Qingzun Immortal Emperor said at the same time. The primordial immortal emperor had indeed considered everything, but he did not expect that someone would dare to destroy the things in the imperial palace. Therefore, he used a great technique to nail the bookshelf here. However, he did not expect Yi Qinghan and the others to use an emperor weapon to cut the bookshelf. Humda boom! Chu Shijunxian raised his sword and slashed, but he did not manage to cut the wood. He only made a gap. Yi Qinghan clenched his iron fist and swung his right arm to the other side. Kacha! The mystic wood was broken, and only the ancient monarch technique remained on the wooden plank. However, because the entire great divine ability had disappeared due to the destruction of the mystic wood, Yi Qinghan gently lifted the ancient monarch technique up. With a flip of the page, immortal light shot out in all directions. Endless profound emperor techniques filled the surroundings. Immortal emperor finger technique. The first page flashed with 4 huge words. It was a soul-stirring sight. With the immortal emperor technique, no one dared to look directly at it. However, Chu Shijunxian and Qing Zun Immortal Emperor were overjoyed and excited. They could fully comprehend it. This immortal emperor technique was the Firmament Emperor's signature move. One finger could break mountains and rivers, break the dome. The Firmament Emperor had even destroyed a huge star with one finger. The Immortal Emperor finger technique was not just the complete version. It also contained insights. The 3 did not even need to discuss. They sat cross-legged on the ground and cultivated. Yi Qinghan's eyes played a crucial role. Even without the Firmament Emperor's insights, he could cultivate quickly. Moreover, he cultivated faster than Chu Shijunxian and Qing Zun Immortal Emperor. His understanding was more thorough, and his finger techniques were more mysterious and powerful. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The essence of the Imperial Immortal Finger Technique appeared in front of the 3. Yi Qinghan could even see the Imperial Immortal Finger Technique's breakdown. This was equivalent to the Imperial Immortal Finger Technique being personally taught by the Imperial Immortal Finger Technique. The gap between them and Chu Shijun Immortal Emperor and Qing Zun Immortal Emperor was huge. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 3's aura grew stronger and stronger. The Immortal Emperor's aura filled the sky. The Startwining Vine even stretched out one of its vines, wanting to know what was going on. Seeing the Immortal Emperor Finger Technique, the vines turned into fingerprints, and the void was shattered. Whoosh! The Startwining Vine's main body entered the side chamber, and eagerly studied the Immortal Emperor Finger Technique. No matter how much it understood, it had a unique ability compared to Yi Qinghan and the others. It could use countless vines to do different things. This meant that it could unleash hundreds or even thousands of Immortal Emperor Finger Techniques in an instant. What kind of person could do this? Time flew. After a few months, Yi Qinghan was the first to stand up. The aura of the dragon and tiger mask was even more captivating. His aura was closer to that of an archaic immortal general, and his fighting strength was increasing day by day. The Immortal Emperor Finger Technique used up too much energy. Even the Starry Sky Demon Core's absorption speed could not keep up. However, its power was still terrifying. Even with his cultivation speed, he had only absorbed 50% of the 9 levels of Immortal Emperor Finger Technique's essence. The rest would take a long time to settle. Let's cultivate for now. We can cultivate again when we have time. We can't afford to wait, Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Immortal Emperor Qing Zun and Chu Shijun Immortal were still unsatisfied. However, Yi Qinghan's decision was right. They should not bite off more than they could chew. At this time, it was better to use the 3 or 4 levels of Immortal Emperor Finger Techniques. Only through continuous practice and use would the Immortal Emperor Finger Technique become stronger. Yi Qinghan had cultivated to the 5th level, Immortal Emperor Qing Zun had cultivated to the 4th level, and Chu Shijun Immortal had only cultivated to the 3rd level. This was the difference. At this time, the Startwining Vine stretched out dozens of vines, and actually swept the Immortal Emperor Finger Technique away. This fella had taken a fancy to the Immortal Emperor Finger Technique. Although it had not transformed, it was indeed suitable for this technique. Yi Qinghan shrugged and said indifferently, "It's fine. It's the same for anyone. As long as we have time, we can take it out and cultivate together." Chu Shijun Immortal trusted Yi Qinghan very much. Although Immortal Emperor Qing Zun was reluctant, he could not say anything. After all, his life was saved by Yi Qinghan. After a while, the multicolored snake and God-Eater eagle returned. They had their own immortal rings and immortal rings. They were of very high grade and could take away ordinary 4th form immemorial realm treasures. Their return meant that the other side halls had been cleared. Without the Yen ancestor's heart, there was no need to keep the Lingxiao Imperial Hall. Let's go to the imperial tomb of the Lingshao Imperial Hall. No matter what method we use, we have to open the imperial tomb. I want to see if these immortal emperors are really dead. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said in a low voice. Chapter 2747. The Shao Imperial Mausoleum was majestic and magnificent. A mountain had been turned into a tomb. The bottom of the mountain was hollowed out and controlled by the emperor's law, refining it into a huge space. At the top of the mountain, there was a tombstone, indicating the location of the imperial mausoleum. The imperial mausoleum was the resting place of the primordial immortal emperor. The killing array inside was dangerous, and the slightest carelessness could lead to death. Therefore, the array outside was set up by experts in the fourth state. It couldn't stop experts, and there was no need to stop experts. Not many people dared to enter the imperial mausoleum. But Yi Qinghan dared. Boom! Yi Qinghan's saber split the sky and earth, cutting open the array. The world shook. The ground under his feet cracked, and a crack more than 1 zhang wide tore open the ground, leading directly to the Lingshao Imperial Palace. Phew! Yi Qinghan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and his eyes flashed. No matter how much dust and smoke filled the air, it couldn't block his eyes. Yi Qinghan stepped toward the entrance of the Imperial Mausoleum. It was a huge stone door, refined from a star. Even if it was slightly weaker than the blood-bone boundary steel, it wasn't something that anyone could break open. Yi Qinghan's lips curled into a sneer. He held the saber with both hands and his veins bulged. His star demon core operated, and the stars in the sky shone brightly, suppressing the sun's light. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The saber light tore through the void. Boom! The 7-foot heavy saber broke through the sky and smashed into the stone door with an unparalleled power. Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The entire mountain shook, and hundreds of cracks appeared on the stone door, but it wasn't destroyed. Chu Shijun became one with his sword, and used the Liang Emperor sword to pierce through the rainbow. The Emperor's sword sank more than an inch into the stone door, but the terrifying impact sent him flying. Bang bang bang. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chu Shijun spat out blood, and his hair was disheveled. Cough cough cough. Chu Shijun kept coughing out blood, and he almost couldn't get up. His body was still too weak compared to Yi Qinghan's. Yi Qinghan was as steady as Mount Tai. Dozens of cracks appeared on the ground beneath his feet. The violent tremors continued for a long time without stopping. Soon the saber stabilized. Chu Shixian pulled out the Liang Emperor sword and retreated again. Boom! Whoosh! A clear crack appeared in the void. Yi Qinghan swept out with his saber, borrowing the power of the crack on the stone tablet. That sword scar was unstoppable and destroyed everything in its path. It directly blasted open the stone door. Thud thud thud. This time, Yi Qinghan retreated dozens of steps before coming to a stop. He channeled all of the impact into the ground, causing the cracks to widen and deepen. Immortal Emperor Qing Zun frowned. He had never seen a madman like Yi Qinghan before, but because of this, his blood was boiling. In life, the most important thing was to go all out. If one did not even have the courage to go all out, how could one talk about becoming an emperor? What emperor of eternity? Isn't that laughable? Whoosh! Yi Qinghan raised his saber and came before the stone door. The lights in the imperial mausoleum's passageway had not been extinguished. The walls were embedded with gems and luminous pearls, and the stairs were clearly visible. Yi Qinghan threw a stone into the passageway to test the waters. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Bang! In a split second, several terrifying crossbow bolts shattered the void and pierced through the stone door, shooting out from the outside. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's body twisted, and a crossbow bolt brushed past his mask. The sharp aura of the arrow pierced through the mask, and he felt a burning pain. Without the mask, the force of the Emperor technique alone could kill a fourth-form cultivator. Even if it couldn't kill Yi Qinghan, it could still severely injure him. Dong dong dong. Hoo hoo hoo. Yi Qinghan's heart was beating wildly. This was the technique of the 12 immemorial emperors. They could kill anyone even after countless years. Immortal Emperor Qing Zun and Chu Shijun were also shocked. They did not even have time to dodge the crossbow bolts. Yi Qinghan, who was standing at the entrance of the passageway, actually dodged them. One had to admit that his reaction speed was far superior to ordinary people. It's very dangerous inside, but I have no other choice. You can choose to wait for me outside the Imperial Mausoleum. Yi Qinghan said firmly. Chu Shijun was not a pushover either. He snorted and said, "Since I want to be an emperor, how can I be an emperor if this little bit of danger stops me outside?" Immortal Emperor Qingzun saw that Chu Shijun was full of fighting spirit. He was a minor level higher than Chu Shijun. How could he not dare to fight? Could it be that this emperor is inferior to you two juniors? Immortal Emperor Qingzun snorted. Yi Qinghan faintly nodded and released his Qi Jin, forming a huge 8 trigrams shield in front of him. Although it was just Qi Jin, it could still block some of the killing formations for a moment. This moment was enough to buy him some time. Pick up some stones. We'll use them to ask for directions. Yi Qinghan slowly stepped into the Imperial Mausoleum and reminded in a low voice. Chu Shijun and Immortal Emperor Qingzun bent down to pick up more than 10 stones at the same time. They followed closely behind Yi Qinghan. The slow footsteps reverberated in the passageway. Yi Qinghan stopped after every step. He was extremely cautious and did not dare to be impudent here. More than 10 steps, but they actually took the time for a joss stick to burn. This showed how vigilant Yi Qinghan was. Fortunately, there were no more dangers on the steps. There were no immemorial killing formations. At the turn, Yi Qinghan said to Chu Shijun, "Throw a stone out and use the wall opposite to enter the passageway below." Xiu! Bang! The stone went through the wall and rolled down the steps. However, it did not activate the immemorial killing formations. Chu Shijun was about to move forward when he was stopped by Yi Qinghan. "Wait!" Yi Qinghan reminded in a low voice. The dark green passageway emitted a terrifying aura. Waves of killing intent enveloped the passageway. Those who had no experience in adventuring would be killed by the crossbow bolts as soon as they stepped through the stone door. After about 5 breaths of time, the passageway suddenly shone brightly. The killing formation's aura rushed out of the passageway and slammed directly into Yi Qinghan's 8 trigram shield. Boom! The terrifying qi directly sent Yi Qinghan flying. Even the two behind him lost control and slammed into the steps. It was unknown what the steps were made of, but it almost broke Chu Shijun and Immortal Emperor Qingzun's waists. Cuff cuff. The 3 of them spat out blood at almost the same time. This was not the direct impact of the Emperor killing formation. Otherwise, it would not be as simple as spitting out blood. Phew! Yi Qinghan let out a relieved breath. As for Chu Shijun, he was completely subdued by Yi Qinghan. If not for Yi Qinghan stopping him, Chu Shijun would probably have turned into a bloody mist. Throw it again! Push! This time, Chu Shijun did not hesitate and directly threw out a stone. However, after waiting for a long time, no formation was activated. Only then did Yi Qinghan relax and enter the passageway. The walls around them were shattered, and the gems were turned into dust. However, the range of the damage was not large. The passageway was clearly visible. There were 3 passageways, and they went in 3 different directions. Similarly, there was only one way out. No matter which way one went, death was certain as long as one went in the other 2. Which way? Chu Shijun asked Yi Qinghan directly. Yi Qinghan said without hesitation, "Go to the center." The Taigu Emperor likes to be self-centered. His coffin will not be placed in a remote location. Although it was just a guess, it contained principles. Yi Qinghan still held the 8 trigram shield and took the initiative to walk in front. Pa pa pa. Yi Qinghan constantly used his right hand to knock on the walls on both sides. Arrows constantly shot out from the walls, densely packed. Anyone standing there would be turned into a porcupine. Chapter 2748. The crossbow bolts continued to shoot, but there was only one wave. After a long time, Yi Qinghan exhaled and said in a low voice, "We are safe." Duh. The 3 of them moved quickly through the corridor and entered a vast and boundless grotto heaven space. A bronze coffin floated in the air, and below it was an altar filled with offerings. Because this place was isolated from everything, everything seemed to have been placed there yesterday. Yi Qinghan and the other two looked around and realized that there were many statues similar to terracotta soldiers. They were lifelike and even exuded killing intent. The three of them immediately felt that they were being watched. There are living creatures in this grotto heaven space, Yi Qinghan said bluntly. Chu Shijun and Immortal Emperor Qingzun felt the same. They looked around warily, especially the statues. They seemed to be ready to attack at any time. Immortal Emperor Qingzun was very knowledgeable and guessed, it should be these statues. They are waiting to be activated. Although they are not living creatures, they are like mechanical puppets. They have extremely high combat power and can use emperor techniques. They are not afraid of death or pain. Without destroying their foundation, it will be difficult to defeat them. Yi Qinghan did a rough count. There were 18 statues made of top-grade materials. If they were mechanical puppets, it would be difficult to defeat them with the sharpness of their attacks. Senior Brother Chu, Senior Emperor Qing, let's attack at the same time and try to destroy 3. Yi Qinghan looked at the two of them and suggested in a low voice. Immortal Emperor Qingzun immediately reminded them, if they are mechanical puppets, we must attack from the top. The control center of the mechanical puppets is at the abdomen and brain. When we attack, we just need to destroy the center. Yi Qinghan and Chu Shijun nodded. The three of them attacked 3 mechanical puppets at the same time. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom. The saber beam and emperor technique exploded at the same time. The sword beam was like a rainbow as it slashed at the mechanical puppet's brain. The energy shot out in all directions and exploded inside. The center was torn apart. However, just as the 3 of them attacked the mechanical puppets, the other mechanical puppets were activated. Whoosh, boom, crack crack crack. The remaining 15 mechanical puppets unleashed their emperor's techniques at the same time, all of which were the lost techniques of the Shao Emperor when he was alive. Some used the Emperor's Immortal Finger technique, some used the Shao Emperor's Sword technique, and some used the Thunderbolt Palm technique, all of which were mixed with the Emperor's aura. He used the most domineering method to break the mechanical man's defense. His hands directly pierced the mechanical man's chest and destroyed the control center. The control center in its head was still operating, but it was punched through by him. The control center was smashed into pieces. About an hour later, the dragon and tiger form tore 4 mechanical men apart. Yi Qinghan destroyed 2, but his body was full of wounds. They were all inflicted by the mechanical men. Chu Shijun used the Liang Emperor's sword to destroy 2. The start-whining vine was still rolling in the heavenly abode with a mechanical man. No one could do anything to the other. The start-whining vine was really not good at killing mechanical men. Although Immortal Emperor Qingzun's cultivation was the strongest, he wasn't good at killing mechanical men. His attack power couldn't be compared to the Liang Emperor's sword. He also couldn't be compared to Yi Qinghan's abnormal physical body. He spent a lot of effort to kill one mechanical man. Moreover, there were at least a few hundred wounds on his body. Although they weren't fatal, the pain was bone-piercing. Other than the one entangled by the start-whining vine, there were 5 mechanical men left. Their sword techniques were swift and fierce. It was as if they were really in the 4th immemorial state with abnormal defense. They caused great damage to Yi Qinghan and the rest. However, Yi Qinghan and the rest exploded in the end. The dragon and tiger tear directly shattered the last 5 mechanical men. The control centers were also crushed. As for the start-whining vine, the scene was a little funny. The mechanical man was rolling on the ground, but the start-whining vine didn't let go. Even if the vine broke, another vine would immediately replace it and forcefully entangle the mechanical man. Yi Qinghan ordered the start-whining vine to let go of the mechanical man. He attacked with all his might. His iron fist smashed the mechanical man's head with the power to shatter the stars. The head was smashed into smithereens. The control center of the brain was destroyed, but its legs could still attack. It was obvious how ferocious this mechanical man was. Yi Qinghan crushed the mechanical man's leg bone with one foot. His left fist continuously struck its abdomen, and his right fist took advantage of the momentum to smash its abdomen. He grabbed the control center of the abdomen and completely killed it. The 18 immemorial mechanical men were killed. The feeling of being watched immediately disappeared. Yi Qinghan's hand was a bloody mess. The blood and bones were clearly visible. The ferocity in his eyes didn't diminish. Even Chu Shijun and immortal Emperor Qingzun were shocked by his ferocity. Wah wah wah. Yi Qinghan shook his hand. His face was twisted in pain, but it was covered by the mask. Fuck, how did you make these mechanical men? When I'm free, I'll make a few thousand to play with. Yi Qinghan roared and cursed. Immortal Emperor Qingzun and Chu Shijun's mouth twitched. They looked at the broken pieces of mechanical men under their feet. 18 of them almost killed them. If there were a few thousand of them, perhaps only the primordial immortal emperor could win. To make a mechanical man, you need to use up a dead star. You also need to set up the cultivation technique for it. It's quite time-consuming. However, it's also very difficult to learn how to make these mechanical men. I obtained this technique from the Lingshao Imperial Palace. If you want to learn it, I'll give it to you. Immortal Emperor Qingzun explained. Yi Qinghan didn't hesitate to reach out and said, "Give it to me." It seemed like Yi Qinghan really wanted to make a few thousand mechanical men. No one could change his mind once he decided on something. Chapter 2749. Immortal Emperor Qingzun took out an ancient book. It was a very advanced mechanical technique. This is it. It's not easy to learn. Immortal Emperor Qingzun said nonchalantly. He did not want to learn this unorthodox technique. Yi Qinghan took the ancient book and sneered. He said disdainfully, "No matter how difficult it is, I can learn it. It's an unorthodox technique, but it has a miraculous effect." After a simple calculation, 1,000 mechanical puppets of this level were enough to defeat 3,000 fourth-form ancient immortals and celestials. How many fourth-form ancient immortals and celestials were left? Most importantly, there was no need to feel sorry for the mechanical puppets if they died. Immortal Emperor Qingzun shook his head. That was true, but it was difficult to create. Otherwise, Emperor Shao would not have only made 18 of them. If there were 20 or 30 of them here, the 3 of them would have died long ago. Yi Qinghan kept the ancient book and leaped above the bronze coffin. The entire coffin was protected by a formation. However, it was not an emperor technique, but a formation set up by an immemorial immortal general. It was difficult to open, but it did not mean that it was impossible to open. Boom, boom, hum, hum. Yi Qinghan, Chu Shijun, and immortal Emperor Qingzun unleashed their power at the same time. The 3 of them combined their power and directly shattered the formation outside the coffin. Boom. The bronze coffin landed on the ground, causing the underground palace to tremble. Do you think Emperor Zhao's body is inside? Immortal Emperor Qingzun stared at the bronze coffin and asked hoarsely. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said firmly, "It must be inside. Otherwise, the bronze coffin would not have been lifted by the immortal general and protected by a formation." Yi Qinghan kicked the lid of the coffin. Boom. The lid of the bronze coffin turned into a sharp arrow and smashed into the stone wall. The wall shook violently and almost collapsed. Boom. The emperor's aura rolled, and the mighty grotto heaven space sent Yi Qinghan flying. He bore the brunt of it. After all, he was the one who opened the coffin. If he was not unlucky, who would be unlucky? Boom. Bang. Bang. Yi Qinghan crashed into the wall and fell heavily to the ground. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices, and his body almost collapsed. A large amount of blood flowed out from under the mask. It was extremely terrifying. "Are you okay?" Immortal Emperor Qingzun and Chu Shijun Xian immediately rushed over and helped Yi Qinghan up. However, Yi Qinghan was completely paralyzed and almost died. Dong dong dong. Yi Qinghan's heart raced, his breathing quickened, and his legs trembled. He stared at the coffin in horror. He would be an idiot if he still couldn't confirm whether the Shao Emperor was inside or not. This wasn't the first primordial immortal emperor's corpse that Yi Qinghan had seen. This was the second. He had also seen the corpse of the primordial heaven spirit demon emperor. If it wasn't for the human Dao Emperor Pagoda, he would have been killed. Hua hua hua. The emperor's aura surged, causing their battle robes to flutter. Chu Shijun Xian and immortal Emperor Qing Zun didn't have the courage to go over and take a look. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth and stood up straight. He said hoarsely, "He's dead." And he was buried after death. He couldn't have left anything behind. Otherwise, the immortal general who buried him would have died. However, there's no corpse here. This means that he didn't use his last will to protect the emperor's corpse. Yi Qinghan's steps were firm as he walked towards the emperor's coffin. He held the 7-foot berserk hammer in his hand. Chu Shijun Xian and immortal Emperor Qing Zun were completely subdued by Yi Qinghan's courage. There was nothing this person didn't dare to do. Let's go. If I don't even dare to look at the emperor's corpse, how can I still say that I'm an emperor? Immortal Emperor Qing Zun seemed to have returned to his youth. He followed Yi Qinghan firmly to the emperor's coffin. The huge emperor's coffin was 3 meters long and 2 meters wide. A middle-aged man with a crown and emperor's battle robes was lying inside. This person was extremely majestic and had a dense emperor's aura. However, his head and chest were pierced through. His flesh and blood were dried up. He was probably killed on the spot. It was impossible for there to be any emperor's will left behind. Yi Qinghan looked at Shao Emperor's corpse. Although he didn't dare to destroy it, he still dared to search the emperor's corpse. Hua! Yi Qinghan bent down to grab Shao Emperor's corpse but was quickly stopped by Chu Shijun Xian. Are you crazy? You dare to touch primordial immortal emperor's corpse? You don't want to live anymore. Chu Shijun Xian said in shock. Yi Qinghan shook his head and said confidently, I've seen an emperor's corpse before. The reason why they could release their last will to protect the emperor's corpse was because they didn't die on the spot. For example, Shao Emperor must have been killed by Yan Zhu or Liang Emperor before he was buried. It's impossible for him to release his will to kill me. Don't worry. After speaking, Yi Qinghan broke free from Chu Shijun Xian's hand and opened his emperor's robes. A numb feeling came from his arm but nothing terrifying happened. Dong dong dong. The two behind him were almost scared to death by Yi Qinghan's actions. However, they couldn't stop Yi Qinghan's crazy actions. Pa pa pa. Yi Qinghan kept patting the emperor's corpse as if he was looking for something. However, something soon appeared. Yi Qinghan reached into the emperor's robes and took out 2 ears. Although they weren't bloody, they were still horrifying. Hua! Yi Qinghan's blood and qi immediately recovered. His Yen clan bloodline erupted as if it was burning. Ha! Yi Qinghan laughed and held the ears. He said excitedly, life is on the way. Liang Emperor didn't let me down. Sure enough, these are Yan Zhu's ears. They should have been ripped off from Yan Zhu's body. However, he paid the price with his life. Shao Emperor used his life to obtain them. Immortal generals shouldn't dare to take them. That's why they were buried with him. Now I've benefited. Overjoyed, this was an unexpected harvest. Mechanical puppets, Emperor Immortal Finger Technique, Yan Zhu's ears. In just a few decades, he had obtained these treasures. If it was someone else, they wouldn't be able to obtain them in their lifetime. Congratulations, congratulations. If you can gather Yan Zhu's corpse, you'll be the second Yan Zhu. Chu Shijun Xian was also overjoyed. Yi Qinghan was originally an alien star, a tribulation taker. With the support of Yan Zhu's corpse, how terrifying would he be? Qing Zun Immortal Emperor took a deep breath and cupped his fists. Sect Master Yi, this emperor has to admire you. Great luck, great courage. I'm convinced that you'll become an immortal emperor in the future. Yi Qinghan grinned and took the ears. However, Shao Emperor's corpse didn't hide any treasures. Instead, there was an emperor's sword beside his hand. However, he didn't dare to take it. He couldn't take it. Even if he took it, he wouldn't be able to use it. He might even be devoured by the emperor's sword. Let's leave. This time, I'm looking forward to the thrill of the journey. Yi Qinghan took the ears and quickly retreated. Chu Shijun Xian and Qing Zun Immortal Emperor quickly followed. Once they were out of the imperial tombs, although the 3 of them were covered in blood, they were unprecedentedly excited. After surviving the death calamity, their mental states had undergone tremendous changes. If they were to fight to the death again, their mental states would be greatly improved. The battle situation might change drastically. Swish, swish, swish. The three of them quickly rushed to the Lingxiao Imperial Palace and plundered a large amount of resources. Then, they sat cross-legged outside the Imperial Palace to heal their injuries. Yi Qinghan directly refined Yan Zu's ears. He didn't want to waste any time. It would be good if he could increase his strength a little, let alone Yan Zu's ears that could hear things from 1,000 miles away. With the support of Yan Zu's ears and eyes, Yi Qinghan's vision and hearing would be greatly improved. His reaction speed would also increase by several times. Chapter 2750. Yi Qinghan channeled his Yen clan's blood and qi. His eyes and arms supported him as his human Tao spread out and covered the sky. Yan Zu's ears were attached to his ears and were constantly being refined. Time flew by and the sun and moon alternated. At this time, the Insane Manor's army had retreated to the undying immortal world. Everyone was bathed in the river of blood. Some of the older generation of the Insane Manor had killed until their eyes turned red. They fought crazily, causing the hearts of the heroes to tremble. However, at this time, Yi Mingxi's emotionless Tao was sinking deeper and deeper. Although it was getting stronger, it was impossible for her to give up in the future. Shirgu saw this and was extremely angry. He no longer cared about his own life. After experiencing death several times, he had actually reached the fourth state. Even so, he was still fighting crazily. His teeth were like weapons and there was not a single part of his body that was unharmed. "Ada, kill!" The heroes roared. Thousands of Insane Manor's death troops retreated into the undying immortal world and rushed towards the territory of the Qingzun Immortal Empire. At this time, Chess Saint mobilized 5 million loyal soldiers and rushed towards the Insane Manor's army. Wherever they passed, everything was flattened. Hiss hiss hiss. Armored horses and golden spears roared into the sky. An army of 5 million soldiers had slaughtered their way through the battlefield with the effect of 1 trillion cavalry. The formation did not fall into chaos even when they were moving quickly. It was clear to see how well trained this army was. This was an army of death soldiers. They were loyal and devoted, and did not fear death. Insane Manor was retreating while they were rushing. After several months, they gathered at the border of the Kai Yuan Empire. The army opened a hole and sucked the people of Kuang Manor in. If the Chess Saint wanted to destroy Kuang Manor, he only needed to give the order. Yen Ao did not want to hand his life over to the Chess Saint, but he had no other choice. Everyone in Kuang Manor was seriously injured, including him, the owner, Yi Mingxi, and Chu Shijue. Jiang Jingtian's chest was cut open and he was half a step away from death. Gu Qingyu's chest was pierced with 2 sword wounds. Monkey King Qitian's right arm was broken. No one was unharmed. Mu Zhuang, Universal Love Saint, and Zhou Shuguang had just been revived but almost died again. Did Yen Ao have a choice? There was no way out. However, Chess Saint had no intention of betraying them. Otherwise, there would be no need for him to rush to the rescue. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. War banners swayed in the wind, great formations interlocked, one after another, swallowing the heavens and seas, swallowing mountains and rivers. The army kept changing their formations and directly faced the strong enemies. This army was like a meat grinder, and even paragons would be directly annihilated if they were caught in it. In the blink of an eye, the great army killed more than 30 young supreme beings and more than 300 big shots. Even an archaic supreme being from the previous generation was crippled. The others were blasted out of the formation, unable to attack at all. Blood dyed the mountains and rivers red, but the army remained unscathed. The Chess Saint had a cold expression on his face. He pointed his battle flag and the army charged forward. A gap was opened, but no one dared to take the risk and enter the array. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. All of the ancient gods and ancient immortals retreated. Their faces were deathly pale as they furiously looked at the army. They could not imagine how this formation was formed. It contained the supreme truths of the world. These ancient gods and ancient immortals had already suffered heavy losses when fighting against Kuang Manor. How could they not be defeated when facing the army? The army was routed like a collapsing mountain. Even the supreme beings of the previous generation were retreating, and the experts in the rear were fleeing even faster. Once the battle flag was retracted, the army quickly retreated. It was as fast as the seawater that came and retreated even faster. The army of 5 million retreated, protecting the experts of Quang Manor and the district master. They retreated to the territory of an empire, and after a few months, they returned to Ghost Crying Ridge. As the army retreated, the ancient gods and ancient immortals advanced, looking for an opportunity to defeat this army. However, this army's formation was flawless, and there was nothing they could do. What kind of army is this? An archaic supreme god of the previous generation roared. Whoosh! A main flag was raised, accompanied by the battle flag of Quang Manor and the ancient killing god flag. There were 3 large words embroidered on the main flag. Heaven-conquering camp. These 3 large words were soul-stirring, and their aura could swallow mountains and rivers. Even these 3 words were filled with the principles of the operation of the stars, making it impossible for people to resist. Heaven-conquering camp. This was the first time the ancient gods and ancient immortals had suffered such a miserable defeat. They did not even have the thought of fighting because the other party was an iron wall that could not be broken through. So many experts have died, but not even a single soldier was killed. Another ancient emperor of the previous generation roared as he looked at the chess saint on the command platform. He was only at the mystic immortal realm. Mystic immortal realm cultivation. If it were any other mystic immortal realm cultivator, any big shot would be able to kill him a few hundred times. However, this chess saint gave people a feeling that he was unrivaled. He was a monster. Heaven-conquering camp awaits everyone's guidance again, the chess saint said in a deep voice. The battle flag swayed, and the battle drums boomed. It was earth-shattering, causing the army's aura to soar. Heaven-conquering camp. The army roared, shaking the momentum of 1,000 miles. In the depths of the endless galaxy, the masked Taigu Emperor stared below. There were several times when he wanted to rush down and kill the chess saint, but he resisted the urge. Whoosh! The patrolling Tao entered the void, entering the void. In the boundless starry sky, a huge palace floated. It was majestic and had a majestic aura. Even immortals, gods, and humans did not dare to blaspheme it. There were 3 large words engraved on the signboard of the palace. They were flamboyant and majestic. Elite Hall. However, there were no servants in the huge palace. There were not even any experts moving about. The Tao Patrol's figure flashed as he stepped into Elite Hall. The ancient and majestic palace had a majestic aura. Although there was no one guarding it, the chess saint would not dare to enter this place even if he was given 3 guts, much less attack this place. Ancient Immortal World's Elite Hall. An old man sat in the hall. He had white hair, but his face could not be seen. He was also wearing a mask that radiated light. Hall Master, they have been defeated. Why didn't you let me kill those people directly? The Tao Patrol asked with a bow after entering the hall. The old man's every action was filled with dharma and logos. At this moment, the Tao Patrol felt the pressure just by raising his head slightly. Wait for Yi Qinghan to return. Wait for the Yen ancestors' backup plan to appear. Those people are just small fries. The truly troublesome one is Yi Qinghan. This person has 9 lifetimes and 9 tribulations. If you want to send him to break through his limits, you can do whatever you want, the Hall Master said coldly. The Hall Master said coldly. The Tao Patrol took a deep breath and did not dare to refute. Yen ancestor, even in death, you still want to go against me. Do you really want to destroy the legacy of our ancient gods and ancient immortals? This ancient immortal world originally belonged to us ancient gods and ancient immortals. Ants should live in small plains. Now, you actually want to take over the magpie's nest. You deserve to be dismembered. The Hall Master said coldly. At this moment, the Tao Patrol was helpless. He did not dare to say anything more. He could only wait. Wait for Yi Qinghan to return. Wait for all the backup plans to be laid out. Only then would the final battle begin. Yen Emperor's revival has been stopped? The hall master asked coldly when he saw the Dao patrol remain silent. The Dao patrol nodded and said with a bow, "It has been stopped. I killed the 9-colored Brahma heart and reincarnation Shakyamuni. With these 2 great helpers gone, Yi Qinghan has lost a pair of wings. He can't fly high." The star-twisting vines, countless vines turned into finger techniques, shattering the immemorial immortal world. It was extremely fast, leaving afterimages. Everywhere it passed, no primordial immortal beast could escape its hunt. It had devoured a lot of energy along the way. The god-devouring eagle had been left far behind. It should have been raised from a low-grade bloodline to the 3rd stage by Yi Qinghan, who knew how much blood, qi, and immortal treasures had been used. The god-devouring eagle knew that hard work could make up for its lack of talent. The clumsy bird flew first. At this moment, it began to immerse itself in cultivation. While the multicolored snake and the star-entangling vine cultivated for 20 hours, it would cultivate for 100 hours. Yi Qinghan saw this from the bottom of his heart and could only sigh. The god-devouring eagle's bloodline was too inferior. Otherwise, with its willpower, it would definitely not lose to him. The god-devouring eagle had his shadow and backbone. It would never admit defeat. 30 years later, Yi Qinghan, Chu Shijun, and the immortal emperor appeared outside the Shao Emperor's mausoleum countless miles away. They came to the place where the Dao Patrol and Reincarnation Dharma King fought. It was a mess. The emperor's technique had not disappeared yet. It was creepy. The aura of Reincarnation Dharma King. Yi Qinghan's fingertips trembled. A few drops of tears rolled down from the corner of his eyes under the mask. He seemed to see the scene of Reincarnation Dharma King dying in battle. The enemy still has the Taigu Emperor. Chu Shijun took a deep breath. He understood how difficult this battle was. This was a battle between ancient gods and ancient immortals and humans. It was a battle of life and death, a battle of extermination. There was no leeway for the loser. Yi Qinghan looked at the ruined valley and did not think anymore. He turned and stepped into the ancestral land of the Heaven Spirit Demon Emperor. The Imperial Hall here was destroyed. The war here must have been many times more tragic than the Lingshao Imperial Hall where the Shao Emperor was. The Imperial Mausoleum was still there, but it was in ruins. Ancient trees covered the Imperial Mausoleum mountain. They could not even find the entrance. Yi Qinghan, Chu Shijun, and immortal Emperor Qingzun surrounded the Imperial Mausoleum mountain in 3 different directions to find the entrance. The star-twining vine was also devouring the vegetation on the Imperial Mausoleum mountain. It swallowed everything. After a few months, it swallowed the entire Imperial Mausoleum mountain. This morning, purple qi came from the east. The first ray of sunlight shone on the mountainside of the Imperial Mausoleum mountain. Yi Qinghan rushed towards the first ray of sunlight. There was a sunken cave here. There was no stone door. It must have been broken in the past. Yi Qinghan raised his saber and slashed at the entrance of the cave, clearing away all the rocks nearby. But then, the entire Imperial Mausoleum mountain trembled. It seemed to have activated some ancient killing technique. The killing technique inside was activated. Too many rocks fell into the underground palace of the Imperial Mausoleum. It was a mess. There was no imperial coffin, no burial items, not even mechanical puppets. There were only a few huge stone beasts. They were all in an attacking posture, majestic and awe-inspiring. Yi Qinghan, Chu Shijun, and immortal Emperor Qingzun stepped into the cave. The killing technique was completely destroyed. There were broken corpses and weapons everywhere. Obviously, they were not the first group to enter the Imperial Mausoleum. However, they were very unlucky. Everyone who came in died. Not a single person came out alive. These corpses were already rotten because the formation that isolated the outside world was broken. There was a fundamental difference between this place and the Imperial Mausoleum. Yi Qinghan took one step at a time and carefully walked into the depths of the Imperial Mausoleum. Asterisk drip, drip, drip. Asterisk water kept dripping from the dome. There were a few small water troughs below. The power of water was the strongest. Dripping water could penetrate stone. There is actually nothing in such a big imperial mausoleum. Immortal Emperor Qing Zun said in surprise. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He looked around the cave and whispered, "That might not be the case. It's just a trick." Yi Qinghan bent down and turned the stone beasts. They could actually turn. He pointed the heads of the 7 stone beasts at the center of the cave. In an instant, heaven and earth changed. The entire cave changed. The 3 of them seemed to have entered another space-time. It was filled with ancient books, codes, and secret treasures. All of them were ancient supreme treasures. This is the Heaven Spirit Demon Sovereign's treasury? The place for seclusion? Immortal Emperor Qing Zun took a deep breath and said in shock. This is the Heaven Spirit Demon Sovereign's last resort. He was afraid that he would be seriously injured one day and could escape here to recuperate. Unfortunately, he didn't make it back in time. It's all thanks to us. Yi Qinghan looked around. There was a cauldron and dozens of pill bottles. In each bottle, there was an emperor pill shining with golden light. It was filled with dharma and logos and energy. There was also a label on the bottle, describing the effect and grade of the pill. They were all Taigu Emperor pills. One pill could cause a 4th form cultivator to explode. Even Immortal Emperor Chu Shijun and Immortal Emperor Qing Zun would not dare to use it casually. Yi Qinghan did not touch the other treasures. Instead, he went to the pill bottles. He waved his hand and took a bottle. After looking at it, he put it away. He then took out a second bottle. It was a body-tempering pill. This was not an ordinary body-tempering pill, but a Taigu Emperor-level body-tempering pill. In this era, only he could use it if he was not an emperor, because his physical body was too abnormal. Chapter 2752. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath as he looked at the emperor-grade body-tempering pill. His hand trembled as he held the bottle. If I refine this emperor-grade pill and refine the golden body of utmost saint, my body will reach a state of equilibrium with the Yen ancestors' arms, eyes, and ears. I will be able to suppress a true immemorial divine general and shatter a star with one punch. There is no doubt about it. Even if I encounter the Taigu Emperor, it is not impossible for me to escape. Yi Qinghan held the medicine bottle and didn't refine it immediately. If he wanted to complete the golden body of the absolute saint and perfect the pseudo-immemorial the arch-physique, he needed other monarch medicines. More than 30 bottles of emperor herbs were piled up like a mountain. Each bottle had a different effect, but Yi Qinghan wasn't worried. When he saw something that wasn't suitable for him but was suitable for the 2 of them, he casually tossed it over. Chu Shixian and Immortal Emperor Qing Zun were so excited that they threw away their immortal swords and caught the bottles with both hands. They were afraid that the emperor-grade pills would break. Slow down. Slow down, boss. Leave the bottles you don't want. I will take them myself. That's right. Chu Shixian and Immortal Emperor Qing Zun pleaded. Yi Qinghan shook his head and continued to search for a suitable bottle. Soul and emperor-grade pill. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He had finally found the monarch core he was looking for. This divine soul monarch soul pill targeted the soul. If one had a powerful body at the full circle of the Supreme Saint Golden Body but didn't have a matching soul, everything would be nonsense. Found it. Yi Qinghan was wild with joy. He hid the jade bottle in his sleeve. There were less than 10 bottles left. He took the rest. Many of the emperor-grade pills were not for him. He left them for the crazed manor. However, he did not take all of them. Otherwise, Chu Shixian and Immortal Emperor Qing Zun would have complained. Although there were only 8 bottles left, Chu Shijun and Immortal Emperor Qing Zun were already very satisfied. If it was someone else, they wouldn't have left a single bottle behind. Moreover, Yi Qinghan had left 8 bottles behind. If the 2 of them split it, they would have 4 bottles. Yi Qinghan turned his head to look at the excited expressions on the 2 men's faces. He said calmly, I took 26 bottles. Previously, each of you took 2 bottles. There are 8 bottles left. You can divide them among yourselves. Thank you, Brother Yi. If I reach the level of the Taigu Emperor in the future, I will never forget your kindness. Immortal Emperor Qingzun clasped his fists and said excitedly, "He, I won't stand on ceremony with you." Chu Shijun understood Yi Qinghan well. He reached out and took the 4 medicine bottles that he had his eyes on. At this moment, in his sea of consciousness, the dragon tiger mask was roaring like a sea of bitterness. It scattered the medicinal efficacy like a flood and slowly absorbed it. Immediately, it reduced Yi Qinghan's burden by a lot. At this moment, time was no longer that important. A day in the cave was 1,000 years in the world. Chu Shijun and Immortal Emperor Qingzun each took a slightly lower grade emperor medicine and began to cultivate. The impact of the emperor medicine was more terrifying and made the two hover between life and death. However, their desire to live prevailed over the aura of death. In addition, Chu Shijun had the protection of the fine emperor sword and protected their lives. Those who survived a great disaster were bound to have good fortune in the future. This was absolutely true. The two souls and the power in their bodies had been purified to a perfect degree. Their understanding of emperor techniques had increased by several realms. Their battle prowess had increased by more than a few times. The multicolored snake and god-devourer eagle were diligently cultivating the beast-god codex. It was a pity that Supremacy Yi was not around. Otherwise, he might have been able to become the emperor of all beasts. The start-whining vine was not interested in other codices. It focused on cultivating the emperor's immortal finger. Taking advantage of the 1,000 years that Yi Qinghan had been cultivating in seclusion, it had cultivated the emperor's immortal finger to the 7th level, catching up to Yi Qinghan. However, it had tens of thousands of vines and could unleash thousands of finger imprints in an instant. Even Yi Qinghan would not be a match for this technique. At this moment, Yi Qinghan had completely blocked off his perception of the outside world. He did not know that there were 4 people outside the imperial mausoleum. 4 very young experts with dense emperor's aura, who knew how many times stronger than Supreme Cloud's emperor's legacy. Anyone would believe that these people were the real emperor's legacy. The 4 of them held the immemorial pseudo-emperor sword and stood outside the imperial mausoleum for 300 years. They did not attack the mausoleum directly but waited silently. After waiting for more than 300 years, Yi Qinghan still had not appeared. The 4 of them sat cross-legged on the ground, comprehending the emperor's legacy. One day, a silhouette appeared in the sky and landed beside the 4 of them. He was dressed like the 4 of them, wearing a mask on his face. 3 words were embroidered below the shoulder of his battle robe: Class 1 Hall. Those who were not paying attention would not have noticed it. The person who appeared was the patrol, the Taigu Emperor. He was incomparably dignified. He stared at the entrance of the imperial mausoleum and asked coldly, "They haven't come out yet?" The 4 of them stood up. They did not feel much pressure facing the patrol. Their determination to become emperors was much stronger than those so-called emperors' legacy outside. "Elder, they haven't come out yet. Is there a need to wait? Why don't we just charge in and take their heads?" One of the experts asked in a low voice. The patrol said coldly, "What I want is for you to break Yi Qinghan's Tao heart. You can't kill him." This was an old saying and the 4 experts were tired of hearing it. However, they had to listen because this order was not only given by the patrol, but also by the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall. No one dared to disobey. Even if they dared to disobey the patrol, they would not dare to disobey the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall. Although they did not even know who the Hall Master was, they had seen the Hall Master defeat the Taigu Emperor in 100 moves. No matter what this person was called, he was still an emperor of all time. Chapter 2753. The patrolman only gave them the order to wait and left, leaving behind 4 young supremes. Blade, sword, axe, and axe. The 4 of them had different weapons, which meant that they were addressed differently. Blade Emperor, Sword Emperor, Axe Emperor, and Axe Emperor. They were all cultivating the techniques of the 12 immemorial emperors. The elite hall had all the techniques and cultivation experiences of the Taigu emperors. The establishment of the elite hall was to prevent the decline of the ancient gods and immortals. Now it was playing a crucial role. If one looked carefully, there was a mark on the forehead of each of them. It was the mark of a blade, a sword, an axe, and an axe. The four of them shook their heads coldly. Their figures flashed and sat at the top, bottom, and left and right of the cave entrance respectively. They sealed off all the exits and waited for Yi Qinghan to appear. At this moment, Yi Qinghan was still tempering his soul in the imperial mausoleum. His soul had strengthened many times. With his current soul, he no longer needed to control the eyes of the blazing ancestor. His eyes could operate on their own. His soul could handle it. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years had passed. Yi Qinghan woke up from his seclusion. His eyes were no longer unfamiliar and had completely merged with his. Their cooperation was perfect. A powerful balance matched the physical body. At this moment, his physical body was not enough. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and waved his hand to retrieve the emperor pill. He swallowed it without hesitation. Whoosh! Boomed up. The medicinal power was like a torrent, rushing to his limbs and bones. Other than his arms, ears, and eyes, the other parts of his body were almost destroyed by the medicinal power. His physical body that had been tempered for countless years seemed extremely weak at this moment. This emperor pill was condensed by the heaven spirit demon emperor to prevent himself from being seriously injured. It could be seen that his physical body was even more terrifying. A dignified 10,000 beast emperor could defeat a Taigu emperor with his physical body. If he cultivated to that level, he would not be too far away from becoming an eternal emperor. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Gurgle gurgle. Yi Qinghan's blood almost burned. His skin turned from crystal clear to cracked. His golden body was stained with blood. Veins popped out all over his body. Divine light surged, order was reconstructed, and the emperor's law followed. The starry sky demon core patterns were reconstructed on the surface of his body. Yi Qinghan growled. His aura spread and rushed out of the cave, rushing into the sky, alerting the 4 elite hall experts. The 4 experts opened their eyes at the same time. The sabers, swords, axes in their hands were ready to attack. He's getting stronger. So what? The 4 of them were unstoppable. Even though Yi Qinghan was getting stronger, they weren't afraid at all. In fact, their battle intent was even stronger. Enemies weren't scary, but having no opponents was scary. Chu Shijun and immortal Emperor Qingzun were startled awake. Their cultivation had undergone a qualitative transformation. Their aura was comparable to the immemorial divine generals. Their battle prowess was incredible. However, at this moment, Yi Qinghan's combat strength seemed to be even more exaggerated than theirs. Yi Qinghan's flesh and blood contained boundless power. The Dharma and logos of the Absolute Saint permeated the air, and his golden body of the Absolute Saint neared completion. His black hair billowed, and the image of the dragon and tiger protected him. Anyone who attacked Yi Qinghan at this moment could be bitten by the dragon and tiger. The image of the dragon and tiger formed from energy had already materialized. At this moment, even the multicolored snake had been awakened. Only the God-devourer hawk was desperately cultivating. It had transformed into a simple and honest man. His face was covered with a beard, and he was incomparably dignified. The first feeling he gave off was a sense of security, sincerity, and loyalty. The God-Eater Eagle had studied the beast god canon for 2,000 years. He had cultivated from a complete noob to the 6th level, which was equivalent to the 4th level. If he could cultivate to the 7th level, he would be comparable to a divine general. If he could reach the 8th level, he would be a great perfection divine general, second only to the Taigu Emperor. If he could cultivate to the 9th level, he would be the first to evolve into the 10,000 Beast Emperor with the most ordinary bloodline. However, after the 6th level, it was very difficult to understand. Without sufficient intelligence and resources, it would take him and the multicolored snake hundreds of thousands of years to cultivate to the 7th level. Whether they could cultivate to the 8th level would depend on their luck. They might never reach that level in their lifetime. The multicolored snake looked at Yi Qinghan and began to retreat. Its body twisted and covered in dragon scales. It was like a small 5-clawed golden dragon. A golden horn gradually appeared on its forehead, controlling the blood flow of 10,000 beasts. If it really cultivated to the 7th level, Even divine birds would be afraid of it. Bush, bush, bush. A layer of snake skin was shed, and new dragon scales appeared. Soon, the multicolored snake's body twisted and began to transform into a human. The reconstruction of flesh and blood and the transformation of 10,000 beasts was a very painful process. Blood flowed everywhere, and the pain made the snake grimace. It looked like it would go berserk at any time. Even Chu Shixian involuntarily took a step back. Immortal Emperor Qingzun sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at the ferocious multicolored snake and said in a low voice, "This guy is so savage. I wonder how Brother Yi tamed it." Immortal Emperor Qingzun had seen all kinds of ferocious beasts, but the multicolored snake's savagery was beyond his imagination. Chu Shixian also nodded. This ferocious beast made one feel uneasy. Probably only a madman like Yi Qinghan would dare to tame a mutated beast like the multicolored snake. Indeed, the multicolored snake was a mutated beast and was very difficult to tame. Even if it was tamed, it could kill its master at any time. All these years, Yi Qinghan was the only one who felt at ease keeping it by his side. He did not mistreat it. Whatever the god-devouring eagle, divine bird, and star-twining vine had, it had. It even had better things. Yi Qinghan did not mistreat it. The multicolored snake's head twisted and transformed into a human head. It was a young man with sinister eyes. He was extremely savage and had sharp teeth. He was extremely venomous. Following that was the neck, upper body, the multicolored snake twisted and transformed, and the rocks under its feet were crushed by his claws. It was hard to imagine how he did it with his young body. What a ferocious beast. It can actually make me feel the danger of death. Immortal Emperor Qingzun sighed. Hiss. Chu Shixian took a deep breath and took another step back. The Liang Emperor sword in his hand was unsheathed at any time. His sense of danger made him unconsciously hostile towards the multicolored snake. Venomous, sinister, savage. This was Chu Shixian and Immortal Emperor Qingzun's evaluation of the multicolored snake. After a few days, the multicolored snake successfully transformed. It looked slightly older than the divine bird, about 13 or 14 years old. However, the divine bird gave people a wretched feeling. The god-devouring eagle gave people a sense of sincerity, loyalty, and security. However, this multicolored snake was very special. It made people feel very uncomfortable and unconvinced. What? The multicolored snake opened its eyes and glared at Chu Shixian and Immortal Emperor Qingzun. It was very unfriendly. However, Yi Qinghan was refining his golden body of utmost sage. At the final moment, he could not wake up at all. The god-devouring eagle was awakened by the multicolored snake's savage aura. It said sternly, "What are you doing?" Hiss, hiss, hiss. The multicolored snake did not seem to have said anything. It stuck out its tongue. However, it did not look cute at all. Instead, it gave people a creepy feeling. "I want to eat people." The multicolored snake's strange expression hit a cold heart. It made people shudder. The god-devouring eagle frowned and said, "These two are boss's friends. Are you crazy?" The multicolored snake looked at Yi Qinghan, who had his eyes closed. Finally, a second emotion appeared in its eyes. It was respect and fear. No matter how savage it was like a docile child in front of Yi Qinghan. This was because no matter how savage it was not as savage as Yi Qinghan when he was angry. No, it was beyond savage. Please recommend me, monthly vote. Chapter 2754. Everything had its vanquisher, and the colorful snake was not afraid of anyone. His eyes were filled with malice, but when he saw Yi Qinghan, he became as docile as a lamb. Yi Qinghan's body radiated dharma and logos, and his body was dotted with stars. It was as though his physical body was a universe, and the universe contained countless stars. Every cell contained the power of a star, and it was possible to destroy a galaxy with a single punch, let alone a dead star. At this moment, Chu Shixian understood that Yi Qinghan was at the forefront. As expected of an alien star, a tribulation taker. Seems like I have to change my target. Otherwise, my Dao heart will be broken sooner or later, Chu Shixian muttered. Qing Zun Immortal Emperor was originally very depressed. Seeing Chu Shixian so optimistic, he could not help but smile and sigh. Yes, compared to him, my Dao heart will be broken sooner or later. I almost broke through to the Dao realm just now. Yi Qinghan's aura was too dense, and it covered the aura fluctuations of the 4 experts outside. As a result, the two had not discovered the 4 supreme geniuses of Class 1 Hall. The colorful snake's sense of smell was very vicious. He walked slowly to the cave entrance alone, and the tip of his nose twitched constantly. He seemed to have caught the scent of the enemy, and even the scent of a precious bloodline. The corner of his mouth curled up, and his red tongue licked his teeth. However, the danger also reminded him that the 4 people outside were not easy to deal with. If he wanted to kill them, he had to cultivate the beast god cannon to the 7th tier. Wah! The colorful snake slowly retreated into the cave, sat quietly, and continued to comprehend the beast god canon. Chu Shixian and Qing Zun Immortal Emperor continued to comprehend the apotheosis immortal finger technique with the star-twisting vine. Time passed quickly, and they had been in seclusion in the cave for 2,500 years. The mountains and rivers changed, but they remained the same. Yi Qinghan's entire body was flowing with precious light. His limbs, bones, and every piece of his skin had been tempered anew. His corporeal body was weaker than Yanzu's, and it was also weaker than Heaven Spirit Beast Monarch's. However, he was already extremely close to the Monarch realm. After breaking through the Saint Golden Body, he would be the new Taigu Emperor. He was just 1 step away, but if he wanted to take that step, he didn't know how much resources and time he would have to spend. The Emperor Pill would no longer have any effect on his body. Yi Qinghan opened his eyes, and the order of the space trembled. Yanzu's eyes no longer needed to be deliberately moved, but involuntarily followed his will, and the will in his eyes gave off an extremely powerful pressure. Those were the eyes of the Eternal Emperor. How much time has passed? Yi Qinghan slowly stood up. He had not spoken for a long time, and his voice had become hoarse. Chu Shijun shook his head. They had been in seclusion here for so long that time had passed unknowingly. Qing Zun Immortal Emperor pondered for a moment and said, "About 2,000 years have passed. I can't calculate the exact time." Yi Qinghan was shocked. He didn't expect time to pass so quickly. 2,000 years was enough to change an era's civilization. Yi Qinghan was naturally worried about Kuang Fu, but at this time, his worries were unnecessary because there was no way to help Kuang Fu survive this calamity. Yi Qinghan turned around and looked around. He found a malicious young man. With the power of the contract, he wasn't so stupid that he didn't know that the person was the rainbow snake. As soon as the rainbow snake was stared at by Yi Qinghan, its malicious gaze immediately disappeared, and it became a little flattering. It smiled slyly and said, "Boss, you're awake? Congratulations on breaking through again." Slap. Yi Qinghan slapped his head. This time, he realized that Supreme Sovereign Ye's ability was not just a little bit powerful. Apart from the God-devouring eagle, the people and spiritual pets around him had more or less become wretched. They were so cheap that it made one's hair stand on end. Speak properly. Don't be like a wretched bird. Yi Qinghan reprimanded angrily. Yes. Boss, don't be angry. I will definitely change. The rainbow snake shrugged and bowed. It didn't have the malicious feeling from before. It was definitely a good actor. Yi Qinghan rolled his eyes. Did this guy have any intention of changing? It was clearly just acting. Fine. Do whatever you want. I don't care. Yi Qinghan waved his hand helplessly. The God-devouring eagle smiled and put away the beast god cannon. It stood aside obediently and waited for Yi Qinghan's orders. Yi Qinghan probably felt that they had stayed here for too long. He said, "Pack up and leave immediately. We're going to the next destination." The God-devouring eagle packed up the other classics, but the rainbow snake said wretchedly, "Boss, there are 4 extremely powerful fellows outside. Do you think you can kill them and let me eat their flesh?" Yi Qinghan was stunned. He was shocked by the rainbow snake's strong taste. This guy actually wanted to eat humans. The rainbow snake licked its teeth and said with a flattering smile, "Their ancient god and ancient immortal blood is very rich. It can help me evolve my bloodline. As long as boss can capture them alive and let me eat them, I will be able to help you conquer the world in the future." Yi Qinghan was a bit vigilant. He warned in a deep voice, "In the future, without my orders, if you dare to wantonly eat the flesh of others, I will personally kill you." "Understood. Understood. I will listen to boss." The rainbow snake was terrified to the bone. Its previous aura was completely gone. It had changed to the point of perfection. It had received Sovereign Ye's true teachings. Yi Qinghan sighed and shook his head. Damn, this bastard Sovereign Ye's ability to assimilate people is too strong. Chu Shijun Xian and Immortal Emperor Qingzun looked at the rainbow snake's transformation and felt a chill run down their spines. They trembled and immediately retreated far away. If he was not Yi Qinghan's spirit pet, the two of them would not have given the rainbow snake a chance to wreak havoc. After the god-devouring eagle packed up all the classics and weapons, Yi Qinghan turned and walked to the entrance of the cave. He said indifferently, "Let's go and see who is here." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Tap tap tap. Yi Qinghan slowly stepped out of the cave. His eyes, which hadn't been exposed to sunlight for a long time, didn't show any discomfort. He only slightly furrowed his brows. Under the sunlight, the mask shone brightly. Yi Qinghan's penetrating eyes saw Saber Emperor sitting in front of him. The Class 1 Hall emblem on his shoulder did not escape Yi Qinghan's eyes. The mark of a saber on his forehead was enough to prove his identity. There were people on both sides and above. Yi Qinghan walked out with his saber. He looked around and walked directly to the Saber Emperor expert. The Saber Emperor stood up. His eyes were sharp and domineering like a saber. He said hoarsely, "You're finally willing to come out." Yi Qinghan looked around coldly and replied, "Who are you? The Emperor's inheritance does not belong to you, right?" The Saber Emperor sneered with disdain. "Don't compare us to those ants. We're not even able to withstand a single blow. We're here today to see if you really have the potential to reach the top. Which one of you wants to go first? Or do you want to go together?" Yi Qinghan asked indifferently. Whoosh. Whoosh. The Sword Emperor swooped down from the peak of the mountain. His sword aura crushed the mountains and rivers. The great Tao wailed. All laws bowed down. Emperor laws surged. No. Fellow Taoist Yi, don't be in a hurry. Before I test your strength, I want to get rid of these two small fries. The Sword Emperor stared at Chu Shijun and Immortal Emperor Qingzun. The dignified emperors of the previous generation were small fries in the eyes of the Sword Emperor. It had to be said that he was too confident. Yi Qinghan glanced at Chu Shijun Xian and Immortal Emperor Qingzun. Chu Shijun Xian's battle prowess was comparable to an immemorial divine general, but with the Liang Imperial Sword, he could fight against one of them. As for Immortal Emperor Qingzun, his battle prowess was already at the level of a divine general. If they fought like this, both of them could die. Yi Qinghan could not make the decision for them. Fight. So what if they fought to the death? Today, I want to see if the immemorial immortal world's Class 1 hall has fallen. Chu Shijun Xian said while holding his sword. Immortal Emperor Qingzun sneered and said disdainfully, "I've fought for countless years and created countless miracles with my thin bloodline. How can I be scared by a few brats like you? Let's fight. Today, if I die, then there's no need to mention it. If I win, I can also condense my path to the ancient emperor." Yi Qinghan nodded. This battle would be very interesting. Life and death were unknown. However, one thing was certain. He could kill someone from the immemorial immortal hall, but the prerequisite was that Chu Shijun Xian and Immortal Emperor Qingzun could not be defeated. Otherwise, if the four of them joined forces, he would definitely die. "Leave the first battle to me." "Who's next?" "What?" Chu Shijun Xian stepped forward and said coldly. "Liang Imperial Sword, I want to experience it. Today, I'll kill you. It won't be a disgrace to the Liang Imperial Sword." Sword the Arch said coldly. "Wah wah wah." Whooshed at the others all retreated 30 li and stood on two adjacent mountains, monitoring each other. Obviously, anyone who dared to break the rules would be killed. The Emperor's swords rose, and sword waves surged in all directions. The two's sword auras were condensed to the point of materialization. Their sword intent commanded their sword Dao. They had comprehended their sword Dao to the extreme. What at the Emperor's swords were vast and mighty. The swords in their hands were sharp and soul-snatching. Their battle robes fluttered. They looked at each other but did not make a move. Gathering force. Using force to suppress others. At their level, they did not move, but their sword intent wreaked havoc. They could even kill people from 1,000 li away. If one was slightly weaker, they might be killed by the other party's force. Wah wah wah. Boom boom boom. Sword chi clashed in the air. Mountains and rivers were shattered, and dust was kicked up. The two of them stared at each other. They were evenly matched, giving each other tit for tat. The battle intent in their bones soared to the heavens. Sword light sparkled in their eyes. They were both looking for the best opportunity to strike. It was very likely that a situation where they would kill each other with one strike would occur. In a battle between experts, life and death would be decided in an instant. It could be Chu Shijun Xian or Sword the Arch. Whoever died couldn't be said to be weak. He hurriedly waved his hand, and the multicolored snake returned to his original body. He kept it in his blood and said to Saber the Arch and Company, "He has just transformed and is still ignorant of the world. Everyone, please don't take it to heart." Chapter 2756. It was supposed to be a tragic battle, but it was ruined by the multicolored snake's words. The three supreme experts of Class 1 Hall were actually speechless. If they were to argue with the multicolored snake now, wouldn't they seem petty? The joke outside the arena almost caused a bloody battle, but the battle inside the arena had already begun. The two's battle robes were torn apart by the sword chi, and the sword chi cut their faces. They were so ferocious that they wanted to devour the mountains and rivers. The Sword Emperor was only half a step away, but he was suppressed to the point that he couldn't breathe properly. The Sword the Arch roared. His anger overflowed into the sky. He slashed horizontally with his sword and directly crushed the ground. A wave of energy spread through the universe. He risked his life to let out that breath, but his left rib was exposed. Boom. Chu Shixian kicked the Sword Emperor's left rib at the moment of impact. Crack. Ah. Boom boom boom. Thud thud thud. In an instant, the two flew back at the same time. However, the Sword Emperor's left rib was broken, and his chi and blood were in a mess. He couldn't help but retreat dozens of steps. Chu Shixian's palm was numb, and he also retreated dozens of steps. His chi and blood were in a mess, and a mouthful of essence blood gushed out from his throat. Chu Shixian coughed up blood, and his battle robes were dyed red. He stabbed the Emperor's sword into the ground, and he knelt on one knee. His eyes were bloodshot, and they were red like a demon. The Sword Emperor didn't have it easy either. He had taken a risk and injured Chu Shixian, but his left rib was broken. The pseudo-immemorial sword in his hand was almost cut in half, and there was a thumb-sized gap. You deserve to die. The Sword Emperor was strong enough. He was affected. He used the pseudo-Taigu Emperor sword to fight against the Liang Emperor sword, and he was still able to injure Chu Shixian. Chu Shixian slowly stood up. He held the Emperor's sword in his hand and walked toward the Sword Emperor. His footsteps became faster, and his eyes shone with a fierce light. He was resolute in his Emperor's will. You deserve to die even more. The resolute will roared in the void, and his aura collided with the heavens. The Liang Emperor sword technique surged with the wind. Boom boom boom. The ground cracked, and the two charged to meet each other. At this moment, Yi Qinghan's eyes were fixed on the battlefield. He was constantly looking for the Sword Emperor's flaws. However, the Sword Emperor's swordsmanship had already reached a stage where there were no flaws. Especially after he had regained his breath, his swordsmanship had become even more proficient. Yi Qinghan did not miss a single detail. He was even able to portray the stance of his opponent's sword to perfection. Immortal Emperor Qingzun was also trying to figure out Sword Monarch's weakness. However, Sword Monarch's speed was too fast and he had no weaknesses at all. If he was in Sword Monarch's position, he would have a harder time. Does he have a chance to win? Immortal Emperor Qingzun asked. Yi Qinghan nodded slightly and said softly, "It's a 50-50 chance. Pay attention to Sword Monarch's sword-wielding hand. His elbow joint is still holding back 30% of his strength. He is very confident. When both sides were injured, he used all his strength. His arm completely exploded and the resulting force directly injured senior brother Chu. However, when he uses all his strength, he will reveal his weaknesses. Therefore this person, once he overcomes this weakness, his combat strength will be very terrifying." Immortal Emperor Qingzun nodded and observed carefully. Sword Monarch's weakness was indeed as Yi Qinghan said. It was because he was too confident when he was young. He was used to holding back 30% of his strength. Once he used all his strength, his weaknesses would appear. If he uses all his strength and forces him to use all his strength, won't he reveal more of his weaknesses? Immortal Emperor Qingzun asked softly. Yi Qinghan nodded affirmatively and said, "If he wins this time, he will be very terrifying in the future. It won't be a problem for him to become an emperor." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom! Although Sword Monarch used 30% of his strength, he was still unable to deal fatal damage to Chu Shijunxian. The more he fought, the more anxious he became. He used all his strength several times to test the waters. Chu Shijunxian didn't seem to discover his weaknesses, but he didn't dare to take the risk anymore. How do I use all my strength without revealing any weaknesses? Sword Monarch also wanted to overcome this problem. However, it wasn't hard to change habits that had been accumulated over the years. It was easy to change mountains and rivers, but hard to change one's nature. When a habit was formed, it was really hard to change it. Whoosh.hum. Chu Shijunxian was very stable now. He kept hacking at the gaps in the fake Taigu Emperor's sword. He wanted to break Sword Monarch's sword first. It had to be said that he was very smart. Without a sword, Sword Monarch's combat strength would be greatly reduced. Bang bang bang. Kakaka. The fake Taigu Emperor's sword cracked and wailed non-stop. The bones of the two people's hands cracked and blood flowed non-stop. There was no chance. If Sword Monarch didn't kill Chu Shijunxian now, this sword would break. Sword Monarch had no way to retreat. His eyes flashed fiercely as he used all his strength with the sword in his right hand. His sword was like a rainbow as he became one with the sword, forming a sharp sword that cut through the void. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Hummed at the sword whistled like a song, shattering the void. Don't take it head-on. Use an unconventional sword and slash his left shoulder. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists tightly as he roared in his heart. He couldn't wait to kill Sword Monarch himself. At this moment, Chu Shijunxian didn't make any defensive moves. Instead, he clasped his hands together and activated the strongest profound of Liang Emperor's sword technique. He wanted to fight head-on. Yi Qinghan's pupils constricted as energy leaked out. The mountain rocks under his feet were crushed. There was no chance. Sword Monarch roared angrily as his aura was like a rainbow. He pulled out a flame and burned the ground. Boom, ahum. Liang Emperor's sword whistled as it sang in the sky. He released his Emperor's aura and took the initiative to soar into the sky. It looked like he was charging, but the sword edge suddenly changed and slashed through the void. Prediction sword technique, sword break his body. That's right, this wasn't the sword controlling technique, but the prediction of prediction. He accurately predicted Sword Monarch's sword force and moves. At the start, he was charging, but the sword followed his heart and slashed horizontally instead of the sword tip. Boom. Whoosh. Puffed up, the sword edge cut through Sword Monarch's defense and slashed his left shoulder. The Emperor's robe on his left shoulder was sliced open and his shoulder blade was severed. Poochie. His left arm was severed as blood splattered everywhere. Chu Shijunxian had already dodged Sword Monarch's attack. He turned sideways and clasped his hands together as he ruthlessly smashed Sword Monarch's back. Boom. Sword Monarch's body was almost smashed apart as he spat out a large mouthful of blood essence and crashed to the ground. The blood splattered into Chu Shijunxian's eyes and blurred his vision. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The moment Sword Monarch landed, the sword in his hand drew a perfect arc and pierced through Chu Shijunxian's right leg. Puchi. Kacha. His leg bone was pierced. At roar. Both of them let out a mournful roar and fell to the ground at the same time. Liang Emperor's sword drew an arc in the sky and took the initiative to descend from the sky. It ruthlessly pierced Sword Monarch's head and nailed him to the ground. Boom! Sword Monarch's hand slammed into the ground as his sword left his hand. Before he died, he looked at Chu Shijunxian with unwillingness. It wasn't that Sword Monarch wasn't strong, he was just lacking in the fact that he didn't have the real Taigo Emperor's sword. The blood of the two dyed the land red and was carried by the wind. The smell of blood spread for thousands of miles. One was dead and one was heavily injured. It was truly tragic. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.